Naruto, Drop System. Chapter 1, The Golden Legend, Azura Chakra. Time, May 18th, Year 54 of Konoha, 3:30 p.m. Location, Ninja Academy Playground, the first-year practice field. More than a month after the school started, the first-year students were finally having their first small test. Not long ago, the Shuriken throwing test had just finished, and now it was time for the taijutsu match. The students formed a circle, either standing or sitting, watching the two figures fighting in the open space. The two figures were very small, with chubby, baby-fat faces, looking only about 5 or 6 years old. One had blonde hair, the other silver hair, one had blue eyes, the other red. The blonde child kept attacking the silver-haired child, but his random punches were easily deflected by the silver-haired child. Due to an overly forceful straight punch, the blonde child's stance became unstable, his body tilting forward slightly. Seizing the opportunity, the silver-haired child ducked and closed in, grabbing the opponent's arms and performing an over-the-shoulder throw, sending him flying. As the heavy sound of a body hitting the ground echoed, the referee, Irika, immediately announced the result: Naruto Uzumaki is down. The match is over. The winner is Yagyu. Both sides, make the seal of reconciliation. As soon as he finished speaking, the blonde child slowly got up from the ground, unwillingly saying, "Damn it, I was so close to winning." Hearing this, Irika's forehead was covered in black lines. Every move had been countered. Where did he get the nerve to say he almost won? However, Irika didn't say anything to discourage Naruto. After all, having recently resolved his own inner conflict, his attitude toward Naruto had changed. "Hey! Yagyu, why are you spacing out? Are you looking down on me?" As Naruto walked up to Yagyu and held out his index and middle fingers to make the seal, he suddenly noticed that the opponent who had just defeated him was dazed, and immediately shouted in dissatisfaction. Yagyu snapped back to reality and instinctively said something hurtful. "Sorry, I didn't hurt you, did I?" Naruto instantly exploded. "Damn it, you really are looking down on me. Just wait, I'll definitely beat you and that arrogant Sasuke one day." "Well, you'd better work hard then. I'm not going to let you catch up." Yagyu suddenly grinned. This confident smile made Naruto freeze for a moment, and it also stunned Irika and the watching classmates nearby. Yagyu, this guy, seemed to suddenly become more cheerful. But that cute face, still full of baby fat but already showing signs of future handsomeness, made his smile incredibly charming. Many of the young girls blushed, some even screamed out loud. "Yagyu-kun is so handsome." After making the seal of reconciliation with Naruto, Yagyu returned to the group, half-heartedly accepting his classmates' compliments while intensely staring at the virtual screen only he could see. If it weren't for his strong mental fortitude, Yagyu would have been trembling with excitement. If it weren't for the setting, he might have even screamed to release his emotions. After 6 years of transmigration, he finally awakened his cheat ability. Yagyu, a transmigrator, 6 years old this year. Unlike those who transmigrated by possessing someone else's body and living with their name, or those who physically crossed into another world, Yagyu was born in this world, as his mother's child after 10 months of pregnancy. Unfortunately, he was born on the same day, month, and year as Naruto. The moment he was born, the Nine-Tails incident occurred. His mother was fatally wounded protecting him and died, and his father, a Konoha Chunin, was killed instantly by the Nine-Tails AoE attack while assisting the third Hokage with his squad. Transmigrating only to be left alone, Yagyu was bewildered. This was way too stereotypical. Had he become the protagonist of some novel? But as he grew up, Yagyu realized he was overthinking it. Transmigrating into the Naruto world, where bloodline supremacy ruled, and being born an ordinary orphan without a special bloodline, this start doomed him to be cannon fodder. If he was lucky, he might live long enough to have Madara Uchiha grab him by the throat during the Fourth Great Ninja War and ask, "Do you want to dance too?" To be praised by Madara as the strongest, one had to be an extreme genius in some field. Otherwise, no matter how hard you worked or how talented you were, Kage level was your limit. Being the same age as Naruto and Sasuke, Yagyu was stuck in Konoha until the age of 12, which made reversing his fate nearly impossible. After a few years of realizing that he truly didn't have a cheat ability, Yagyu decided to give up and be a minor character. He no longer fantasized about reaching the peak of the ninja world. He just hoped to survive the Konoha Crush Plan, Pain's assault on Konoha, and the fourth great ninja war, and then marry a beautiful, well-endowed supporting character. That would be enough. However, it seemed like Lady Luck was deliberately playing a joke on him. Just now, when Yagyu defeated Naruto, a golden light suddenly flashed from Naruto's body, and a golden beam shot out, forming a floating golden orb nearby. This golden orb was the reason Yagyu had been stunned. A few seconds later, the golden orb automatically flew towards Yagyu, like auto-loot in a game. When the orb merged into his body, a virtual panel appeared in front of Yagyu. The panel displayed Yagyu's personal information. Host, Yagyu. Age, 6. Bloodline limit, none. Inventory, Azura Chakra, gold. Yagyu's information was extremely brief, with his name and a small avatar to the left. Below that was a game-like inventory, a 5x5 grid. In the first grid was the golden orb. However, when Yagyu saw the information about the golden orb, his breath caught, filled with both excitement and fear. Excitement because this thing was one of the few items in this world that could allow someone to change their destiny. Naruto and Sasuke became saviors because they were reincarnations of the sons of the Sage of Six Paths. The Azura Chakra and Indra Chakra granted them the ultimate yin-yang powers. Possessing Azura's Chakra meant inheriting the Sage of Six Paths' true sage body. Possessing Indra's Chakra meant inheriting the Sage of Six Paths' sage eyes. When one side fully developed their sage body or sage eyes, and then combined a bit of the other's chakra, they could awaken one of the ultimate eye techniques capable of both destruction and creation, the Rinnegan. Madara Uchiha was the best example of this. The fear was that Azura's Chakra had a connection to the Sage of Six Paths. Each generation's reincarnations of Azura and Indra were one of the sage's trump cards for dealing with the possible resurrection of his mother. Did Naruto drop this entirely, or did he only lose a part of it? Or, like in games, was this just a dropped item and it had no effect on Naruto at all? Of course, the most crucial question was, would fusing with this thing make him influenced by Otsutsuki Azura? And would the Sage of Six Paths come looking for him? Yagyu didn't know. All he knew was that right now, he was extremely tempted. Uchiha Sasuke desired power for revenge. Some people desired power to save or destroy the world. Yagyu desired power because, in his previous life, he was just an ordinary person. He couldn't get superpowers in his previous life, but in this life, he had the chance to touch such extraordinary power. Even knowing he was destined to be cannon fodder in the end, and that he would face life and death crises in the future, Yagyu still chose to become a ninja. And now, an opportunity to go from cannon fodder to a game-breaking power was right in front of him. If he was going to be cautious and hesitant, he might as well hang himself. With this thought, Yagyu's gaze suddenly became resolute. Chapter 2, Only by cheating can you reverse your fate. Even though Yagyu was excited, he didn't immediately fuse with Azura's chakra. After taking a few deep breaths, Yagyu closed the virtual panel and shifted his focus back to the practice field. As the rounds of taijutsu matches ended, the first small test for the first-year students finally concluded. With a smile, Yagyu bid farewell to his enthusiastic classmates and returned home, finally taking off his mask-like smile. While changing shoes at the entrance, Yagyu summoned the virtual panel again and tapped on the golden orb with his finger. Just like in a game, a prompt asking if he wanted to use the item appeared in front of him. Taking another deep breath, Yagyu clicked, yes. Swoosh. In an instant, the golden orb in his inventory transformed into a streak of golden light, flying out like a shooting star and merging into Yagyu's body. Immediately, his body flashed with golden light, similar to the leveling up effect in a game. And then, nothing else happened. That effect. I'd give it a 3 out of 10 at best, Yagyu muttered, slightly sarcastic. He then started feeling around his body, trying to see if anything had changed. Of course, there was no obvious physical change. Yagyu knew that any changes would be internal, not external. So, he went to the living room, sat down cross-legged on the tatami mat, and closed his eyes to extract chakra. Even though Yagyu was just an ordinary civilian without a bloodline limit, he was considered a genius now. At least until graduation, he would shine as a talented civilian. His soul was that of an adult from another world, giving him advanced thinking similar to those early blooming geniuses. His soul also provided him with mental energy far beyond the average person's. And chakra is the result of merging physical energy with mental energy. Originally, Yagyu's mental energy was over the limit for his age, but because his physical energy was quite ordinary, the amount of chakra he could produce wasn't exceptional. When he mixed his physical and mental energy, his chakra levels remained average. But now, as Yagyu extracted chakra as he usually did, the surge of energy from his 130 trillion cells felt like going from a child's trickle to turning on a full-blast faucet. As the two energies merged, the chakra cyclone in Yagyu's body rapidly expanded, visibly growing in size. If someone were to look at Yagyu through a Byakugan or Sharingan, they would see his blue chakra cyclone slowly getting bigger and more concentrated in color. It wasn't clear how long it had been, but eventually, Yagyu stopped extracting chakra and slowly opened his red eyes, filled with astonishment. He murmured, "So this is what it feels like to cheat. How could anyone possibly beat this?" There's a huge difference between ordinary players and paying players, just as there is between paying players and cheaters. Ordinary players grind, paying players enjoy, and cheaters enjoy even more. After extracting chakra for just a short while, his chakra amount had already surged to several times what it was before. Yagyu finally understood just how harsh the reality of bloodline supremacy was. Only by cheating could he hope to reverse his fate. After the initial shock, Yagyu suddenly laughed and said, "Haha. It's funny how life suddenly feels meaningful, and the world seems so exciting now." Like the dawn of a new day, the once rough road ahead suddenly became smooth and clear. As he regained his composure, Yagyu's mind became tense again. What lay ahead was the biggest test, the moment to prove the true power of his cheat ability. In the following days, Yagyu lived as usual, playing the role of a 6-year-old child. He endured the discomfort of playing with other kids, blending into their little groups like a character in a Japanese anime. During this time, he didn't find himself entering some otherworldly space during sleep, nor did he meet any floating white-haired elder. Yagyu didn't know whether the Sage of Six Paths was secretly observing him. But for the next few years, he had to continue playing the part of a child, and couldn't afford to talk to himself like before. If nothing happened during this period because his cheat ability was above everything else, that would be great. But Yagyu didn't dare to gamble on that. Only by staying cautious could he survive long enough to reach the pinnacle. The timeline moved forward to the latter half of year 54 of Konoha. Winter had arrived, and snow was falling heavily. Unknowingly, 5 months had passed since Yagyu fused with Azura's chakra. During this time, Yagyu's progress had been remarkable. In terms of chakra amount, aside from Naruto, there wasn't anyone in the entire first year, and not even in the 6th year, who had more than him. The changes within just half a year were astonishing. Yagyu couldn't even imagine how much his chakra would skyrocket by the time he graduated. One thing was certain, by then, his chakra would be measured in units. Although having a lot of chakra doesn't directly represent strength, it does give one the luxury to act recklessly. Those with limited chakra have to carefully calculate their every move during a fight. Naruto, on the other hand, could use the forbidden technique, multi-shadow clone jutsu, as if it were a normal jutsu, and each clone could wield an A-rank Rasengan. This swarm tactic could easily compensate for any lack of combat experience. If someone with immense physical strength worked as hard as Naruto, Kisame Hoshigaki was the best example of what could happen. Yagyu wouldn't waste his talent like Naruto did. Even before entering the ninja academy, once Yagyu successfully extracted chakra, he practiced walking up walls using his feet at home, laying a solid foundation for chakra control. Now that his chakra levels had risen, Yagyu immediately began learning the ultimate cheat skill, Shadow Clone Jutsu. Although Yagyu was an orphan now, he came from a ninja family. He lived in a 2-story house, one of the inheritances his parents had left him. Luckily, it hadn't been destroyed by the Nine Tails back then. When he turned 3 and left the orphanage, Yagyu was sent back to his house to start learning how to live independently. During that time, the village didn't seize his property. While cleaning the house, Yagyu found several scrolls. These scrolls were part of his inheritance from his parents, and they contained techniques like chakra extraction methods, the basic 3 jutsu, clone jutsu, transformation jutsu, and substitution jutsu, the leaf instantaneous body technique, a few low-level elemental jutsu scrolls, and the shadow clone jutsu. To Yagyu, the most valuable scroll was, without a doubt, the shadow clone jutsu. For most people, the shadow clone jutsu wasn't considered a cheat skill, as the exhaustion from using the clones would return to the user. If the fatigue exceeded a person's limit, they could literally die from exhaustion. Ordinary ninjas could only use 1 or 2 shadow clones at most to assist in training. But Yagyu, like Naruto, possessed the Sage of Six Paths body, allowing him to endure an extraordinary amount of fatigue. Naruto was an exception among exceptions. Not only did he have the sage's body, but he was also the Jinchuriki of the strongest-tailed beast. Even if he wanted to die, the Nine Tails wouldn't let him. Chapter 3, A Bold Idea. Shadow Clone Jutsu. During the holiday break, Yagyu, as usual, was diligently training at home. With several poof sounds, white mist filled the living room. When the mist dissipated, 2 identical versions of Yagyu appeared beside him. The 2 shadow clones immediately got to work. One sat cross-legged on the tatami, practicing hand seals, while the other flipped through books, studying. As for the real Yagyu, he began warming up, preparing for physical training. "Yagyu, are you home?" "Yagyu, we came to play with you." Just then, voices called out from the balcony outside. Recognizing the familiar voices, Yagyu showed a helpless smile. He didn't ignore them but instead opened the balcony door and looked toward his house's entrance. There he saw 2 small figures wrapped tightly in winter clothes, waving their gloved hands at him. The 2 figures were girls the same age as Yagyu. One had blonde hair, and the other pink, with varying shades of green eyes. Yes, they were none other than Ino Yamanaka and Sakura Haruno, members of Yagyu's current circle of friends. As the saying goes, cast a wide net, catch more fish. Before he had awakened his cheat ability, Yagyu's goal had been to live as a supporting character. He aimed to make a strong impression on Naruto before graduation, survive the events of Naruto Shippuden, and secure a good position in Boruto, perhaps even marrying a beautiful supporting character with generous assets. But to survive, even knowing the plot's course, one still needed a bit of luck and skill. So the girls of this generation became Yagyu's targets. Ino and Sakura were just 2 of them. When Yagyu was 3, he even spent several nights in the snow hoping to accidentally meet a lost little princess and make a good first impression. These young ladies and future apprentices of the 3 legendary Sannin could offer Yagyu great benefits later on if they ever gave him even a small favor. And if he could latch onto a strong connection and live off it, that would be even better. Now that he had reversed his fate, there was no need to win their favor just to survive, but Yagyu had no intention of cutting ties. He had worked hard to build those relationships, so how could he give up halfway? Authors who write stories where characters give up relationships should be punished. With strength comes confidence, and with confidence, bolder ideas should follow. Looking at the 2 girls below, their faces flushed red and adorned with bright smiles, Yagyu's mind suddenly recalled a famous Santa Claus scene. He raised his hand and called out, "Wait a minute, I'll be right down." After speaking, Yagyu returned to his room, put on his winter clothes, and ignored the disdainful looks from his 2 shadow clones as he quickly stepped out of the house. "Yagyu, let's go have a snowball fight," Ino eagerly suggested. "Better not," Yagyu replied. "It's hard to wash wet clothes." "No problem. I can take your clothes home and wash them for you," Ino offered cheerfully. "That's even scarier." "I'm afraid your dad will kill me," Yagyu teased. "Huh? Why would my dad kill you if I washed your clothes?" Ino asked, confused. Yagyu remained silent. Walking along the snowy street, lively Ino chatted with Yagyu, while Sakura, who likely hadn't awakened her second personality yet, remained quiet and shy, watching the 2 of them. Rejecting all of Ino's childish game suggestions, Yagyu's eyes suddenly lit up as he watched villagers shoveling snow. He exclaimed, "I've got it. I just thought of a fun game. Do you 2 want to join?" "Yeah. Let's do it." Ino immediately raised her hand, agreeing without caring what the game was, as long as she could play with Yagyu and Sakura. Sakura also nodded enthusiastically. Seeing their eager agreement, Yagyu led them out of the central street and into a nearby forest. They came to a large tree covered in snow, and Yagyu smiled at Ino and Sakura. "Let's climb the tree." "Eh? What's fun about climbing a tree?" Ino's face, initially filled with anticipation, quickly turned to disappointment. Sakura seemed to feel the same. In response, Yagyu smiled and said, "This isn't just any ordinary tree climbing. Under their curious gazes, Yagyu suddenly made a hand seal. Then, he calmly walked toward the tree. An incredible scene unfolded before Ino and Sakura's eyes. Yagyu's body seemed to defy gravity as he walked freely up the tree trunk, his body suspended in midair. Seeing this ninja technique that wasn't even taught in the academy, Ino and Sakura were left speechless, their mouths wide open in astonishment as they stared at Yagyu. When Yagyu finally came back down, Ino and Sakura's eyes sparkled with excitement as they looked at him. "Yagyu, how did you do that?" Ino asked excitedly. "Is that a jutsu?" "No, it's just a chakra control technique," Yagyu lied without hesitation. "A while ago, while cleaning the house, I accidentally found my father's ninja diary. It recorded his life as a ninja, and that's when I learned that the trick to walking on walls and roofs is to gather chakra at your feet. I had to practice for a long time before I finally learned this technique." "Oh, I see," Ino and Sakura exclaimed in realization. "Gathering chakra at your feet. I want to try too," Ino eagerly declared. She then made a hand seal like Yagyu and tried to gather chakra in her feet before walking toward the tree. However, as soon as she stepped on the bark and lifted her other foot, she immediately fell backward. Before Ino could scream, a hand pressed against her back, catching her mid-fall. "You need to focus and control the chakra to grip the tree," Yagyu reminded her, smiling as he reassured her, "Don't worry about falling, I'll catch you." "Okay." Ino, who had been a little frightened, quickly became excited again. She kept trying over and over, each time either being caught by Yagyu's hand or falling into his arms. Finally, just as her chakra was nearly depleted, Ino managed to lift both feet off the ground and walk a few steps on the tree before falling again. "I did it. Yagyu, I did it." Ino shouted excitedly as she fell into Yagyu's arms. "Impressive. I didn't manage to lift both feet until the second day." "You're much faster than me," Yagyu praised her generously. Then, with a bit of teasing, he added, "But that's still not true success. You'll only be successful when you can walk freely on trees, walls, and even water." Hearing that, Ino quickly calmed down, but her eyes still shone with determination. She turned to Yagyu and said, "Yagyu, this game is so much fun." Chapter 4, The Three Ultimate Simps and a Girl's Admiration. When someone first encounters something new and exciting, they tend to get addicted for a while. Ino, who used to play games like string figures or ninja games, wasn't yet qualified to learn her clan's techniques. The Ninja Academy mostly focused on cultural knowledge at this stage, with very few practical exercises. Ino and Sakura couldn't even perform the 3 basic jutsu yet. So, for Ino, the experience of defying gravity and walking on a tree was incredibly fascinating and fun. Unfortunately, her chakra reserves were too small. Because of this, Ino soon lost the feel of it and started failing repeatedly. Yagyu wasn't surprised by this. The hardest part of walking up a tree isn't controlling the chakra, but managing the dual focus needed to control both feet. When one foot successfully grips the tree, your attention naturally shifts to the other foot, and when gathering chakra for the second foot, it's easy to either neglect the first foot or disrupt its balance. Yagyu himself had been stumped by this in the beginning. When Ino's chakra was finally depleted and she was panting from exhaustion, Yagyu turned to Sakura and said, "Sakura, you give it a try." "Okay," Sakura nodded enthusiastically. She had been waiting for her turn. With her index and middle fingers raised in a seal, Sakura walked toward the tree that was covered in small footprints left by Ino. To Ino's astonishment, something incredible happened. Sakura placed one foot on the tree and immediately lifted the other, her body forming a perfect 90-degree angle as she walked upward. Her hand still in the seal, Sakura steadily climbed the tree. 1 step, 2 steps, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. When she was more than 3 meters off the ground, she finally made a mistake and started falling. "Ah!" Startled, Sakura screamed, instinctively closing her eyes. But as her fall came to a stop, the expected pain didn't come. Instead, a familiar voice reached her ears, just like the one that had pulled her out of darkness in the past. "Don't be afraid. I told you I'd protect you." Opening her misty eyes, Sakura saw Yagyu holding her, and she became completely dazed. Yagyu gently set her down and praised her. "I didn't expect you to be the best at chakra control out of the 3 of us, Sakura." Exactly. Sakura, you've been way too low-key, Ino nodded in agreement. It's not like that. I just got lucky, Sakura replied shyly, lowering her head in embarrassment. Seeing this girl, who was as shy as Hinata, Yagyu couldn't help but marvel at how powerful love can be. Who could have imagined that this well-mannered girl would one day awaken a violent second personality and completely change her character? Yagyu had always liked Sakura, the heroine who was later overshadowed and outshined by supporting characters. In his previous life, many people disliked her because they experienced the story through Naruto's perspective. But if you saw things from Sasuke Uchiha's point of view, you'd realize that both Sakura and Karen were like Obito Uchiha, ultimate simps. Anyone who has ever simped knows how elevated and entitled the object of their devotion feels. Who wouldn't want someone like that? Especially after Boruto came out, where Sakura's charm as a wife helped restore her reputation a bit. As for the Cactus series, Yagyu couldn't even remember how many times he had watched it. Now that the world of the manga and anime had become reality, how could Yagyu possibly let someone else take this ultimate simp? Afterward, Sakura continued to challenge the tree. Unlike Ino's instability, Sakura made it to 5 meters on her second attempt. By her 5th try, she had successfully reached the top of the tree, mastering this technique that wasn't even taught at the Ninja Academy with ease. So beautiful. Standing at the top of the tree, Sakura marveled at the snowy landscape in the distance. Seeing this, the exhausted Ino was filled with motivation again and wanted to challenge the tree once more. But Yagyu stopped her and reminded her, "Don't rush. Wait until your chakra recovers before trying again." This technique tests both talent and emotional stability. It's not something you can master in just 1 or 2 days. You can also practice at home by laying down a mattress and using the wall. All right, Ino reluctantly nodded, though she clearly wasn't satisfied. Judging by her determination, she would definitely practice hard at home. After all, Ino was a proud girl. She was the leader of their little group, and having her little sister figure, Sakura, surpass her was unacceptable. This competitive spirit was exactly what Yagyu wanted to see. Teaching them techniques usually reserved for genin while still in the 1st grade wasn't just a whim, Yagyu had his own agenda. The 3 of them stayed in the forest until lunchtime, after which Ino and Sakura reluctantly headed home. After parting ways with the 2 girls, Yagyu didn't immediately go home. Instead, he decided to buy some groceries. As he walked, large snowflakes began falling from the sky again. While passing through a park, Yagyu suddenly heard the shouts of some children. "Hey, you freak with the white eyes. Don't you even know how to apologize? Hurry up and kneel down and say sorry." Yagyu didn't want to interfere, but certain words made him stop. It was as if a memory resurfaced, and a strange expression appeared on his face. It can't be such a coincidence. Reality can indeed be full of coincidences. Following the sound, Yagyu soon saw 2 boys shoving a girl. The girl didn't fight back. She just hung her head, silently wiping away her tears. This pitiful sight didn't stop the 2 boys. They only became more aggressive, pushing down on her shoulders to force her to kneel. Thud. At that moment, 2 snowballs flew through the air, hitting the boys square in the face. Ouch! Who did that? The snowballs blinded them, covering their faces in snow. Before they could wipe it away, 2 more snowballs hit them, even faster and harder than before, knocking them to the ground. The boys' faces turned red from the impact, and they began to cry. "You'd better run unless you want more," Yagyu said, tossing another snowball in his hand. Seeing this, the boys didn't even think of revenge. They scrambled to their feet and ran away, crying as they fled. Using the shuriken throwing skills he had honed during the recent test, Yagyu chased away the 2 bullies and then walked over to the stunned girl, smiling. "I knew it, it's you. Lost again. Yagyu-kun." Hinata, her face red from either crying or the cold, turned an even deeper shade of crimson. The joy swelling in her heart quickly dispelled her earlier sadness. "Why didn't you fight back earlier?" Yagyu asked, pretending to be curious. "If I remember right, your taijutsu scores were pretty high." I. Hinata instinctively lowered her head, her fingers twirling nervously. She seemed too flustered to know how to explain herself. "Hinata-sama." At that moment, a voice interrupted them. A young man wearing a green vest and a ninja headband, with white eyes like Hinata's, was running toward them, carrying a bag. Seeing this, Yagyu immediately understood the situation. It was clear that Hinata had been waiting for one of her clansmen when those boys targeted her. After all, in the eyes of children, people with white eyes were as strange and disliked as the demon fox their parents warned them about. Yagyu smiled and said, "Don't be too kind. If someone bullies you, fight back. If they get a sense of achievement from picking on you, they won't just keep bullying you, they'll start bullying others, too. Only by scaring them will they stop. Alright, your clan members here. See you at school." With that, Yagyu turned and walked away. As she watched his back disappear into the distance, Hinata's mind flashed back to 2 years ago. Back then, Yagyu was much shorter than he was now. But even then, he had the courage to go out alone at night. Whether it was the Yagyu of the past or the Yagyu of today, he was amazing. And so, a deep sense of admiration quietly began to grow within her. Chapter 5, Year-End Exams, The Strongest Mind. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, it was March of year 55 in Konoha. Before they knew it, the first year of studies was about to end. In April, the first-year students would move up to the second year. However, before the holiday break, there was still one final exam to take. This final exam would determine the top student of the entire grade. March 18th. At 6 in the morning, Yagyu woke up and began his usual physical training in the courtyard of his home. After finishing his morning exercises, he took a shower and started preparing breakfast. After eating breakfast and drinking a full glass of milk, Yagyu made a hand seal and created 2 shadow clones, who, as usual, began their assigned tasks. Meanwhile, Yagyu's real body headed to the Ninja Academy. The morning exam was a written test, where students simply needed to answer questions. The more important assessment would take place in the afternoon. Though they called it important, it was really just a survival exercise added to the usual small test. In fact, calling it a survival exercise was a bit of an exaggeration. It was more like a game of hide and seek. Even the graduation exam for the 6th-year students only involved selecting one of the 3 basic jutsu for evaluation. In the first year, most of the focus was on cultural studies. Children who weren't from ninja families didn't even have the scrolls to practice the 3 basic jutsu. The practical lessons in the afternoon mainly consisted of shuriken throwing or taijutsu sparring. They hadn't even started kunai combat yet. These lessons were meant to help the students accumulate mental and physical energy, laying a strong foundation. Throughout the entire year, the school had only taught them one jutsu, the cloak of invisibility technique. The cloak of invisibility and body flicker technique might seem advanced, but in reality, they were even more basic than the 3 basic jutsu. When Naruto first appeared in the original series, the techniques he used to prank the ninjas chasing him were the Konoha body flicker and the cloak of invisibility. The reason these jutsu felt more advanced was that many skilled individuals had developed them to extraordinary levels. Yagyu guessed that the afternoon survival exercise would likely be a test of their proficiency with the cloak of invisibility. "Hey, Yagyu. Good morning." "Good morning, Yagyu-kun." "Yagyu-kun, do you want to hang out with us after the exam?" "Yagyu, could you pass me some notes during the test? Please? If I fail, my mom will kill me." As soon as Yagyu entered the classroom, many of his male and female classmates greeted him. Yagyu responded to each of them with a warm smile, even stopping to chat with a few, showing great patience. Unlike the aloof Sasuke or the isolated Naruto, Yagyu had crafted a persona as the warm, approachable guy. He was kind and gentle to everyone. After all, only he knew how many geniuses were in this classroom. There were 2 future saviors and Hokages, not to mention clan heads and key figures in various Konoha departments. Who knew if some of the lesser-known characters in the class, who weren't mentioned in the original story, might also become powerful figures in the future. So, even before his cheat ability awakened, Yagyu made sure to leave a good impression on his classmates while he was still considered a genius. And even now, after fusing with Azura's chakra and becoming undoubtedly the strongest in the class, Yagyu maintained this persona. After all, making more friends meant fewer enemies. His strategy was to navigate the complexities of relationships. After chatting with his classmates, Yagyu finally made his way to his seat. Just as he sat down, a small hand tapped his shoulder from behind. It was Ino, sitting behind him, smiling and saying, "Yagyu, good luck on the exam." You've got to secure that top spot. I'll do my best, Yagyu replied with a smile and a nod. Yagyu, does your family have some secret bloodline limit that you've awakened without telling anyone? This time, the voice came from beside Yagyu. It was Shikamaru Nara, resting his head on his desk with his signature tired look. He muttered, ever since you beat Naruto a few months ago, it's like you've become a different person. You're smart, why not take a guess? Yagyu teased. Ha! Shikamaru yawned, then sat up and stretched. I don't know exactly what it is, but something about you definitely changed. Ino, annoyed, chimed in, everyone's got secrets. Why are you being so nosy? Yeah, my bad. Shikamaru nodded, defeated by Ino's raised fist, ready to punch him if he kept asking. However, his curiosity only grew. Normally, Shikamaru wouldn't care about anyone else's secrets. Not even Naruto's mysterious identity interested him that much. But Yagyu was different. After observing Yagyu for a year, Shikamaru noticed that his deskmate seemed like two different people in the first and second halves of the year. In the first half, Yagyu seemed completely fake in Shikamaru's eyes. That easygoing smile that won everyone over was, to someone like Shikamaru, with the sharpest mind and keenest eyes, nothing but a natural performance. Yagyu was a genius, just like Shikamaru, but his actions were too calculated and deliberate. For that reason, Shikamaru didn't particularly like the Yagyu who had intentionally chosen to sit beside him. But in the second half of the year, Shikamaru's view of Yagyu changed dramatically. During that time, Yagyu became more genuine. The calculated smile, the faint shadow of gloom that even the perfect mask couldn't hide, all vanished. Young as he was, Shikamaru couldn't quite understand why someone could change so drastically. He even asked his father about it in a conversation. After receiving several answers from his father, Shikamaru realized that Yagyu's transformation stemmed from a newfound confidence. And that change started right after Yagyu defeated Naruto. Because of this, Shikamaru's curiosity about Yagyu only deepened. How could defeating someone who consistently came last in every test make anyone more confident? There was no doubt that something had changed about Yagyu, or that he was hiding a secret. Whatever this change or secret was, it was the key to Yagyu's newfound confidence and his shift away from constantly acting, believing he could rise above the rest. Shikamaru thought that today's final exam might reveal a clue. With that in mind, Shikamaru suddenly became a little more interested in the exam. Yagyu, unaware of Shikamaru's thoughts, would have been impressed had he known, thinking, no wonder Shikamaru is a future strategist and the 8th Hokage. At just 6 or 7 years old, he could see so much, on par with the genius-level thinking of Itachi Uchiha at the same age. Chapter 6, Naruto and Sasuke are true love, Sakura is just an exception. As time passed, the exam soon began. When the test papers were handed out, Yagyu couldn't help but mentally complain while answering the questions. This world is really warped. In terms of technology, they already had electric lights and refrigerators. Scientists had even created computers, yet nobles still traveled by horse-drawn carriages. The televisions in this world were chakra-powered, used by the 5 Kage for long-distance communication. What's even more absurd is that the children in this world not only understood love at such a young age, but even the subjects taught at the Ninja Academy included chemistry. Yes, chemistry was part of the academic curriculum at the Ninja Academy, along with history. When Yagyu first saw the textbooks, he was stunned. No wonder the geniuses during wartime were on the battlefield by the age of 5 or 6. Kakashi even became an all-around jonin at just 12 years old. The world is so twisted that if you're not a genius or don't have a cheat ability, you'd feel utterly powerless. Fortunately, Yagyu was one of those with a cheat ability. With the help of his shadow clones and his mature thinking, Yagyu consistently scored perfect marks in his cultural studies. These questions posed no difficulty for him. Throughout the morning, the Ninja Academy was unusually quiet. Only during breaks did the noise return. As school was about to end, parents started gathering at the gates. When the bell rang, signaling the end of the exam, the students rushed out of the school. Some students looked for familiar faces in the crowd and either ran into their parents' arms or held their hands and left together. Other students excitedly ran home by themselves. But there were also students who looked on with envy. These were the children who had lost their families in the Nine Tails incident or had no idea who their parents were, orphans. Naruto was among the envious ones, hiding inside the school, too afraid to come out. Every time he appeared in a crowd, the looks of hatred and disgust from the villagers made him feel like he was suffocating. He couldn't understand why people treated him that way. Or, more accurately, what had he done wrong to deserve such treatment? In the entire school, only Yagyu and the teachers like Iruka knew the reason. But Yagyu wouldn't tell Naruto. In fact, he didn't dare. Yagyu was warm and kind to everyone, even somewhat calculated before his cheat ability awakened. However, there were two people he deliberately kept his distance from, Naruto and Sasuke Uchiha. Their identities were too special, and getting too close to them could spell trouble. If he got too friendly with them, he might even attract the attention of certain powerful figures. Even now, with his cheat ability awakened, Yagyu still kept his distance from them. After saying goodbye to Ino and Sakura, Yagyu returned home. He first had lunch, then dispelled the shadow clones he'd maintained all morning, set his alarm, and took a nap. In the afternoon, the exams continued. Just like the small tests before, the first section was shuriken throwing. This was the only area that had previously been somewhat challenging for Yagyu. Of course, that was before. Now, Yagyu could hit every target dead center with precision. After all, he had shadow clones to help him cheat. Unsurprisingly, Yagyu scored a perfect mark. However, many students from ninja families also achieved perfect scores. Their parents were ninjas, so they often received extra training at home. Unlike the boring academic subjects, they were highly enthusiastic about cool techniques like shuriken throwing. In the context of Yagyu's previous world, they were like students who excelled in one subject while struggling in others. Naruto was also a classic case of a student who struggled in academics. His cultural studies scores were dismal. If the graduation exam hadn't focused on other skills, and if cultural studies had been the main focus, Naruto might never have graduated. After the shuriken throwing test ended, the next section, just like in the small tests, was a taijutsu sparring match. The students formed a circle, either standing or sitting, watching as Iruka stood in the center of the open space. When I call your name, come forward. First group. Kiba Inuzuka vs Yuta Koizumi. As soon as Iruka spoke, Kiba, who now had his ninja dog, Akamaru, excitedly placed his dog down and eagerly stepped forward. In contrast, Yuta Koizumi looked somewhat scared. It was clear that he lacked confidence in his fighting ability. As expected, Yuta was easily defeated by Kiba, who had been playing and training with his ninja dog since childhood and was skilled in combat. One by one, names were called out by Iruka. Both boys and girls fought, though interestingly, the matches were always boy versus boy or girl versus girl. It was obvious that Iruka had deliberately arranged the matches this way. In Yagyu's eyes, these first-year exams were rather childish. They seemed no different from playing house. However, Yagyu didn't go as far as Itachi Uchiha, who sent only a shadow clone to school. That was because Yagyu's shadow clones didn't have the same special ability as his real body. After all, who knew if Iruka might spring a surprise test, causing Yagyu to miss out on an opportunity to earn valuable loot. In the past 6 months, Yagyu had sparred with his classmates numerous times, and each time he won. However, despite his victories, he hadn't seen that familiar golden glow he had hoped for. It was clear that his cheat ability didn't always drop rewards after defeating opponents, and the drop rate was quite low. That time with Naruto had just been a stroke of incredible luck. Perhaps that single stroke of luck had exhausted Yagyu's fortune. 7th group. Yagyu vs Sasuke Uchiha. After another group finished, Yagyu finally heard his name called. When he heard his opponent's name, his eyes lit up with excitement and joy. After half a year, he finally had the chance to face off against the second main character. It seemed Iruka had arranged the matches based on the results of their previous small tests. With great anticipation, Yagyu stood up. Sasuke, surrounded by his fan club, also stood up. Go, Yagyu. You've got to win. Yagyu, make sure to give Sasuke a good beating. Go, Sasuke. Sasuke will definitely win. Who should I cheer for? Both Sasuke and Yagyu are so cute. The duel between two of the most popular students instantly fired up the atmosphere. The boys who were close to Yagyu or disliked Sasuke's cool demeanor cheered Yagyu on. The girls either supported Yagyu, cheered for Sasuke, or were torn, unable to decide who to root for. The loudest voice, of course, belonged to Ino, who cupped her hands around her mouth to amplify her cheers. The more reserved Sakura and the shy Hinata silently cheered for Yagyu in their hearts. Seeing the super-popular Yagyu and Sasuke, Naruto could only look on enviously. However, Naruto didn't resent Yagyu, as he had noticed that Yagyu was one of the few in the class who didn't seem to dislike him. As for his feelings toward Sasuke, maybe it was destiny. Unlike in the original story, Sakura hadn't fallen for Sasuke, and Naruto hadn't developed a crush on Sakura either. It was clear, Naruto and Sasuke were the real love story, and Sakura was just an exception. Chapter 7, Another Drop, the Blue Light Orb. On the training ground, Yagyu and Sasuke Uchiha stood 2 meters apart, facing each other. Irika stood between them and called out, "Both sides, form the seal of confrontation." Upon hearing this, both Yagyu and Sasuke raised their right hands and formed the confrontation seal with their index and middle fingers. Irika took a few steps back, then raised the whistle hanging from his chest, saying, "The rule is simple, whoever hits the ground first loses. Begin." Beep. As soon as the whistle blew, Yagyu and Sasuke lowered their hands and charged toward each other. When they closed the distance, Sasuke raised his right hand and threw a punch toward Yagyu. Yagyu sidestepped the punch and reached out, intending to grab Sasuke's arm and throw him over his shoulder. However, it seemed that Sasuke had anticipated this. He didn't put full power into his punch, and as soon as it extended, he pulled it back by tensing his left shoulder, crouching, and using the momentum to perform a sweeping kick, aiming to knock Yagyu to the ground and end the fight quickly. The next moment, something completely unexpected happened, leaving Sasuke confused and the audience, including Irika, wide-eyed in shock. Sasuke's well-calculated sweep missed. The Yagyu standing in front of him had suddenly vanished with a whoosh. Sasuke then felt a pair of hands grab his shoulders and fling him forward. Because of his sweeping kick, Sasuke was already low to the ground, so this sudden force caused him to fall flat on his face, as if he had tripped on level ground. Seeing this, Irika didn't immediately announce the result. Instead, he stared at Yagyu in disbelief and exclaimed, That was the body flicker technique." What just happened? Did Yagyu disappear and then reappear? That was the body flicker technique. Only upperclassmen know that move. I've seen my brother use it before. I've seen my dad use it too. Wow, that's amazing. The students' exclamations reached Sasuke's ears. Although he was somewhat disheveled from the fall, he quickly got up and, unwilling to admit defeat, said to Yagyu, "Let's go again." Beep. Irika blew the whistle and declared, "The match is over. The winner is Yagyu." Whoosh. Almost as soon as Irika finished speaking, a blue light suddenly flashed around Sasuke. A blue beam shot out from Sasuke's body and landed nearby, forming a floating blue orb. Seeing this, Yagyu's eyes immediately lit up, and he began to ponder. Both with Naruto and now with Sasuke, items had dropped when they were thrown to the ground. Yagyu hadn't incapacitated them, nor knocked them unconscious, let alone killed them. Irika had merely announced the match's result. This kind of judgment was similar to a fighting game where the match ended when the time ran out. Could it be that as long as the opponent was defeated, regardless of the method, the game-like system's item drop function would activate? Damn it. Sasuke muttered in frustration. However, since his clan hadn't been wiped out yet, Sasuke wasn't as extreme as he would later become, nor did he care as much about victory and clan honor. At Irika's reminder, Sasuke walked over to Yagyu, raised his fingers, and said, "Thanks for the match." Yagyu snapped back to reality, formed the seal of reconciliation with Sasuke, and then returned to the group. Just like after the previous small test, Yagyu watched the next matches with his attention wandering, clearly deep in thought. It wasn't until the taijutsu matches ended that Yagyu finally sorted out his thoughts and stood up, heading toward the survival exercise grounds. While putting on his friendly mask and responding to his classmates' enthusiasm, he opened the virtual panel only he could see to check the blue orb that had automatically been added to his inventory. Inventory, EN attribute, blue. Seeing the information about the blue orb, Yagyu was momentarily stunned. The EN attribute. So chakra attributes can drop too. There are 7 chakra natures in total: yin, yang, wind, fire, water, earth, and lightning. There are special chakra test papers sold in shops that can detect one's chakra nature. However, those papers only detect wind, fire, water, earth, and lightning. Yin and yang are considered hidden attributes. Wind, fire, water, earth, and lightning can either be innate or learned. But yin and yang can only be acquired at birth unless the body undergoes some sort of change. Yagyu had previously tested his chakra attributes and found that he possessed water and earth. As for the yin and yang attributes, Yagyu wasn't sure if he had them before awakening his game-like system, and the virtual panel hadn't displayed them either. However, after awakening the system and merging with Asura's chakra, Yagyu was certain that he had acquired the yang attribute. And now, after obtaining the yin attribute from Sasuke, Yagyu would have 4 chakra natures: yin, yang, water, and earth. This realization put Yagyu in a very good mood. After clicking on the virtual panel to merge with the blue orb, Yagyu murmured to himself, "Gold and blue. I wonder how many different colors of these orbs exist." However, more than the orb's color, Yagyu was now more curious about the item drop mechanics. After his earlier reflection, Yagyu had realized why he had only gotten 2 drops in the past 6 months. It had to do with the nature of the victory. In games, there are many types of victories: winning a match when the time runs out, defeating an opponent, winning 2 out of 3 rounds, etc. There's also defeating monsters through direct combat or via specific mechanics. Different types of victories lead to different ratings, affecting the drop rate and the quality of rewards. The reason Yagyu had only gotten 2 items so far was likely due to the way the system rated his victories. These wins were too easy, so the drop rate had been low. Of course, this was only Yagyu's theory for now. He couldn't confirm it yet. After all, he couldn't very well knock his classmates unconscious or kill them, right? If he did that, his ninja career would be over before it even started. He could only wait until graduation to test this theory. Looking at Sasuke ahead of him, a bold idea suddenly flashed through Yagyu's mind. But in the next second, he dismissed it as too crazy. What am I thinking? The Uchiha clan's extermination event, orchestrated by the Konoha higher-ups, was not something a small fry like him, who wasn't even a genin yet, could get involved in. Yagyu chuckled to himself, startled by his own thoughts. Ever since gaining the power to defy fate, it seemed he had started to get carried away. This couldn't go on. In a world full of hidden schemes and dangers, he needed to proceed cautiously until his strength reached the point where he feared no one. With that thought, Yagyu calmed his emotions and prepared for the final test. Chapter 8: The Top Student and a New Friend. The first-year survival exercise was even more boring than the taijutsu matches. After all, the only jutsu that first-year students had learned was the cloak of invisibility. That's why Yagyu's display of the body flicker technique had shocked everyone. If he had shown off the shadow clone jutsu as well, Iruka might have thought, like Itachi Uchiha's teacher, that there was nothing left for the ninja academy to teach him. The survival exercise was simple: each student was given an item, and they had to use it to camouflage themselves within a designated area. If Iruka found someone within the time limit, they would receive a low or high score, depending on their performance. If they remained hidden until the time was up, they would receive full marks. However, in Yagyu's eyes, getting full marks in this exercise depended on Iruka's mood. Trying to fool a chunin like Iruka with the cloak of invisibility was impossible. This test was really just about identifying who was the best at using the jutsu. As expected, Yagyu was one of the top performers. He scored full marks in shuriken throwing, taijutsu, and the survival exercise. Once the academic results came out, the teachers would use these, along with each student's performance in previous tests and random quizzes, to choose the most outstanding student, the top student of the year. In Yagyu's previous life, this would be called being ranked first in the grade. Yagyu already knew that he would be the top student, even before the results were announced. Had he not faced Sasuke Uchiha in the taijutsu match, perhaps Sasuke might have had a chance to compete for the title of top student. After all, both Yagyu and Sasuke had scored full marks in every test and quiz over the year. However, Sasuke's defeat in taijutsu had already sealed his fate. He wouldn't get full marks in the final exam. This meant that Sasuke's overall score would be lower than Yagyu's. Aside from Sasuke, no one else even stood a chance against Yagyu. The title of top student was all but officially his. After finishing the survival exercise, Yagyu left the ninja academy with Ino and Sakura. Watching them from a distance, Hinata felt envious of Ino and Sakura, unable to muster the courage to approach Yagyu and speak to him. Everyone seemed to have their own group of friends, except for Hinata, who had none. It wasn't until after graduation that she found companions in Kiba Inuzuka and Shino Aburame. If it weren't for her younger sister, Hinata might have spent her childhood alone until the age of 12. Her father, Hayashi Hyuga, had already been disappointed in her due to the death of his brother Hisashi and the way Niji had overpowered her. Fortunately, Hinata's status as the heiress of a prestigious clan provided her some protection, and they lived in a world with extraordinary abilities. Otherwise, Hinata might have been bullied like the female protagonists in certain other anime. Even so, in the original story, Hinata didn't escape being bullied by students from other grades, she was picked on twice. It seemed that Yagyu noticed Hinata's gaze, as he suddenly stopped, turned around, and looked at her. When their eyes met, Hinata quickly lowered her head, instinctively twirling her fingers. Seeing this, Yagyu's lips curled into a slight smile. "Yagyu, what's wrong?" Ino asked curiously when she saw Yagyu stop, following his gaze but not seeing Hinata, who had blended into the crowd. Yagyu shook his head with a smile and said, "It's nothing. I thought I heard someone call me, but I must have been mistaken. Let's go." After leaving the ninja academy, just before parting ways with Ino and Sakura, Yagyu asked, "Tomorrow's the start of the break. Would you two like to train together with me?" "Sure." Ino immediately raised her hand, excited. "I've been training hard lately. I'll show you the results." Sakura nodded enthusiastically as well. Seeing them both agree, Yagyu added, "Tomorrow, I'll introduce you to a new friend. But I'll need your help, Ino." "A new friend? What do you need my help with?" Ino asked curiously. Yagyu beckoned her closer, and Ino leaned in. After Yagyu whispered in her ear, Ino looked at him in surprise but then patted her chest confidently, saying, "No problem. Leave it to me." Sakura, watching them like two people speaking in riddles, was curious but didn't ask any questions. "Yagyu, we're here to see you. The sun's up already. Yagyu, are you awake yet?" The next morning, at 8 a.m., Yagyu was at home reading a ninjutsu scroll when he heard the voices of Sakura and Ino. He put the scroll away, got up, and walked out of his house. "Let's go. Time to meet our new friend." Instead of heading to the training ground, Yagyu led them to a large mansion. Upon closer inspection, they could see a large plaque at the entrance of the mansion that read, "Hyuga." That's right, it was the Hyuga clan's estate. Yagyu turned to Ino and smiled, "Now it's your turn, Ino. Watch me." Ino patted her chest confidently and then ran to the entrance of the Hyuga estate, boldly engaging in conversation with the two guards. One of the guards carefully examined Ino before heading inside the mansion. A short while later, the guard returned and invited Ino inside. Seeing this, Sakura couldn't help but ask, "Yagyu, how did you and Hinata meet?" On the way to Yagyu's house, Ino had already told Sakura that the new friend Yagyu wanted to introduce was Hinata. Both Ino and Sakura had some impression of Hinata, but not much. All they knew was that Hinata, the daughter of a prestigious family, seemed very aloof, never interacting with others, joining any group, or having any friends. They never expected Yagyu to be friends with her. What's more, Yagyu had never spoken to Hinata at school. Yagyu didn't hide anything and explained with a smile, "I helped her out twice. Her situation is similar to how yours used to be, Sakura. I think you two will get along really well." Sakura's eyes widened in surprise. "Similar to me? You mean she was also?" "Yes." When Yagyu nodded, Sakura's eyes filled with understanding. "No wonder she's so quiet at school. I thought it was because she didn't like talking to others, but..." Her voice trailed off as she seemed to realize something shocking. She couldn't believe that even someone like Hinata, the heiress of a noble family, would be bullied. Those who bullied Hinata were incredibly bold. But after hearing Yagyu's explanation, Sakura already felt a sense of kinship with Hinata, a bond born from shared experiences. At that moment, Ino emerged from the Hyuga estate. Walking beside her was a girl of similar height, Hinata. Chapter 9, Hinata's Talent and Yagyu's Experiment. Just like with Naruto and Sasuke Uchiha, Yagyu hadn't spoken a single word to Hinata throughout the year in class. Hinata was too shy, and even Yagyu didn't know how to approach her. Plus, back then, his game system hadn't awakened, so he didn't dare get too close to Hinata. After all, who knew if rumors might reach Niji Hyuga or the Hyuga clan, making them think he had ulterior motives toward Hinata. They might even come to warn or discipline him. Yagyu wasn't a Jinchuriki like Naruto and had no powerful backing. However, after his cheat ability awakened, and after his hero moment saving Hinata and nearly being named top student, Yagyu began to reconsider things. Now, he barely qualified to be friends with Hinata. Even though, as a commoner, he still couldn't invite Hinata out to play. But the boar in the new generation of Ino Shikacho, Ino, had that privilege. Being a supporter of the Hokage, Hayashi Hyuga would surely allow Hinata to befriend Ino. Although he was disappointed in his eldest daughter, Hayashi hadn't completely given up on Hinata. In the new Ino Shikacho trio, Ino was the only girl. If Hinata befriended Ino, it would mean a future alliance between the Hyuga clan and the Ino Shikacho, an important connection. When Ino and Hinata approached, Yagyu knew his plan had gone smoothly. Hayashi had indeed given his approval. "I did it. I brought Hinata out," Ino said proudly as she returned to Yagyu. Impressive, as expected from Ino, Yagyu praised her with a thumbs up, then smiled at Hinata, who was standing beside Ino, sneaking glances at him. "Hello, Hinata." Hinata quickly lowered her head when Yagyu looked at her. But remembering what Ino had told her earlier, she finally summoned the courage to lift her head and nervously said, "Yagyu-kun, thank you." After expressing the gratitude she had held onto for 3 years, which had only grown stronger in recent times, Hinata felt a weight lift from her heart. "Have you been watching me all this time just to say thank you?" Yagyu teased, though he already knew the answer. "Yes," Hinata admitted, her head lowering again in embarrassment. "All right, I accept your thanks," Yagyu smiled. "We're about to go train. Would you like to join us?" Hinata's face lit up with surprise. Can I?" "Of course. You're very welcome," Yagyu said with a nod. Seeing Hinata's timid nature, Ino playfully draped an arm around her shoulders and said confidently, "From now on, we're friends, Hinata." "Please take care of us, Hinata," Sakura added with a polite smile. Moved by the kindness and warmth of Yagyu, Ino, and Sakura, Hinata's pale eyes filled with tears of joy. The sudden arrival of friendship, something she had longed for but never attained, left her at a loss. But she knew she couldn't let this opportunity slip away. She nodded vigorously and managed to choke out, "Yes." With Yagyu's effort, 3 of the 4 flowers of the new generation had become friends. "Yagyu, look. I can climb all the way to the top of the tree now." In the familiar forest, Ino eagerly led them to the tree covered in small footprints, eager to show off her progress. Effortlessly running up the tree trunk, defying gravity, Ino quickly reached the treetop, which hadn't yet filled out with leaves. "Impressive." Yagyu praised, giving her a thumbs up. From frequently falling before, Ino had now mastered tree climbing on her first attempt. It was clear she had put in a lot of effort at home. This spoke volumes about her competitive spirit. That drive was a good thing. If she kept it up, Ino might not fall as far behind Sakura and Hinata as she did in the original story. "Hinata, do you want to give it a try?" Ino asked, coming down from the tree. She made the hand seal and smiled at Hinata, who looked astonished. "You gather chakra in your feet and use it to stick to the tree. Yagyu taught us this technique. My dad said this is a trick they don't teach at the Ninja Academy." "That's amazing," Hinata said, more amazed by Yagyu's teaching and growing more impressed by him. With a nod, she said, "Yes. I'd like to try." With her index and middle fingers raised, Hinata made a seal, gathered chakra to her feet, and walked toward the tree. The next moment, something that caused emotional damage to Ino slowly unfolded. Hinata, trying tree climbing for the first time, moved with the same ease as Sakura had before, walking up the trunk like it was flat ground. In no time, Hinata reached the spot where Ino had just been. On her first attempt, she climbed to the top of the tree. Even Sakura had needed a few tries to make it to the top. "That's amazing," Sakura and a now emotionally wounded Ino marveled. But Yagyu wasn't surprised. Of the four flowers, Hinata had the best natural talent. Not only was she the only one among them to possess a Kekki bloodline limit, but she also came from the Hyuga clan, where she had been practicing gentle fist techniques, which involved injecting chakra into the body's chakra points. This technique required precise chakra control, just like tree climbing. Having trained in this from a young age, Hinata's foundation in chakra control was far superior to Sakura's. In the original Naruto, Shippuden, Hinata also mastered medical ninjutsu and barrier techniques. During the Three Tails incident, among Shizune, Sakura, Hinata, and Ino, only Ino fell behind. Before Sakura began training under Tsunade, the strongest among the four girls was also Hinata. Had it not been for her shy personality, Hinata could have easily been one of the most popular figures at school. Even so, she was still among the top 5 students in her year. As Yagyu looked at the 3 girls, who had all mastered tree climbing in their first year, he felt genuinely happy for them but also prepared to carry out his plan. He smiled at them and said, "Since you've all learned tree climbing, next I'll teach you the body flicker technique, and we'll practice some combat skills as well." "Great!" Ino cheered. "I've been wanting to learn the body flicker technique since yesterday." "Me too," Sakura chimed in. "Yagyu, the way you defeated Sasuke was so cool." Hinata nodded in agreement. It seemed that all 3 girls had overlooked the mention of combat skills. That was exactly what Yagyu wanted. While they thought combat training was just an additional lesson, it was actually Yagyu's main goal. He wanted to conduct an experiment on Hinata, Sakura, and Ino. If something dropped from them, Yagyu would be able to determine whether the items from his system were permanently lost by the opponent or just a copy. If it wasn't a permanent loss, Yagyu wouldn't need to worry about defeating someone and accidentally stealing their Kekki, which might lead them to suspect that he had the ability to steal such powers. If that was the case, Yagyu could act without fear. Chapter 10, Top Student Yagyu. The time for Yagyu's experiment was brief and quickly came to an end. Because school had started again. Unlike in Yagyu's previous life, where the school calendar was different, the start and end dates in the Naruto world were similar to those in Japan. The school year began in April and ended in March the following year, split into 2 semesters with several holidays in between. Although the break from the end of the school year to the start of the new one was less than a month, it was enough time for Yagyu to gather some results from his experiment. He discovered that he could drop his opponent's talents and abilities, whether they were innate or learned later, through his game system. These abilities manifested in the form of glowing orbs. The best part was that even though these abilities were dropped, the opponent didn't lose them and remained unaffected. The most valuable item Yagyu obtained during this period was a blue orb from Sakura, which contained her most outstanding talent, chakra control. Even after dropping the chakra control orb, Sakura didn't lose her tree climbing ability. In fact, after learning the body flicker technique, she quickly mastered walking on water as well. Of course, this wasn't the key point Yagyu was using to confirm his findings. Besides the blue orb from Sakura, Yagyu also defeated Hinata, the strongest in taijutsu, during one of their combat training sessions. From her, he dropped a white orb. When Yagyu checked the orb, he was momentarily stunned. Hinata, who seemed so unassuming, had already mastered one of the 3 basic jutsu, the transformation jutsu. That's right, the white orb contained the transformation jutsu. To confirm his theory, Yagyu asked the 3 girls if they knew the 3 basic jutsu. Sakura and Ino both shook their heads. They didn't even have access to the training methods for these techniques. Even though they came from ninja families, their parents knew it was important to focus on building a solid foundation first and hadn't given them any special training. Ino, in particular, wouldn't be taught her family's techniques by her father, Inoichi Yamanaka, until she had mastered her in-release chakra. Only the honest Hinata nodded and demonstrated the transformation jutsu. This not only confirmed Yagyu's suspicion but also showed that Hinata's natural talent surpassed both Ino and Sakura. The Byakugan granted Hinata incredible mental energy, and her large appetite, combined with her daily gentle fist training, meant her physical energy far exceeded that of her peers. It didn't surprise Yagyu at all that Hinata had already mastered the 3 basic jutsu. However, Hinata's display deeply affected Ino and Sakura. They hadn't expected that the quiet and reserved Hinata would be so much more advanced than they were. Luckily for them, they had met Yagyu, who had introduced them to techniques normally reserved for genin. Otherwise, after graduation, they might have been left far behind Hinata. Ino, with her strong competitive spirit and refusal to be outdone by a younger sister, began pestering her parents for extra training at home. To ease their concerns, Ino showed them her mastery of the body flicker technique and told them about her training with Yagyu. As a result, Yagyu's name reached the ears of Inoichi Yamanaka sooner than expected. He hadn't expected another civilian genius to emerge in this generation. Of course, Yagyu was unaware of all this. Over the past year, since awakening his game system, Yagyu had obtained 4 glowing orbs in total, 1 gold, 2 blue, and 1 white. The gold one contained Asura's chakra, the blue ones contained In release and chakra control, and the white one contained the transformation jutsu. From the rarity of these abilities, Yagyu concluded that the orbs had a hierarchy of colors. Gold was the highest, followed by blue, then white. As for whether there were more colors, Yagyu wasn't sure. But from now on, whenever he saw an opponent emitting a glow, he could tell in advance whether he was in for something great or something more ordinary based on the color. April 5th, year 55 of Konoha. This was the first day of the new school year and the day of the promotion ceremony. The third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, personally attended to deliver a speech on the Will of Fire to the new first-year students. There was no doubt that Sarutobi was the only person in Konoha capable of keeping Danzo in check and making him obey. Even though Yagyu had heard the same speech last year, slightly tweaked by Sarutobi, it still stirred the hearts of all the students. After the promotion ceremony, Yagyu and his classmates officially became second-year students. At the same time, the results of the final exam were announced. The top students from each grade had been selected. Yagyu was one of them. Yagyu, did you check the bulletin board? You're the top student. That's amazing, man. Look outside the window, there are so many upperclassmen and underclassmen here to see you. Is this the kind of popularity that comes with being the top student? I'm so jealous. Yagyu is so cool. I want to join Yagyu's fan club. In the new classroom for Class 1 of the second year, Yagyu was surrounded by classmates as soon as he walked in. There were even a lot of female students peeking through the windows to catch a glimpse of the top student. These girls ranged from upperclassmen to first-year students who had just entered the academy. It wasn't just Yagyu who received this attention. Niji Hyuga, now in his third year, was just as popular. Niji, a year older than Yagyu, had already been one of the most talked-about figures at the school since last year. It seemed that starting today, Yagyu's popularity wouldn't be confined to his class or grade. He would become a school-wide sensation, just like Niji. This wasn't just due to the title of top student but also because, like Niji, Yagyu was exceptionally handsome. After finally managing to calm the enthusiasm of his classmates, Yagyu sat down, only for a small hand to tap him on the shoulder. Turning around, he saw Ino grinning at him. How does it feel to be the top student? It's all right. Everyone is a lot more enthusiastic than usual, Yagyu shrugged, then glanced at Hinata, who was sitting next to Sakura, and teased, Hinata, did you ask Yumiko to switch seats with you? Before Hinata could answer, Ino rolled her eyes and said, do you think Hinata has the courage to do something like that? Of course, I asked Yumiko to switch seats with her. Sure enough, Hinata gave a shy smile. The classroom desks were arranged in rows of 3. Yagyu sat beside Nara Shikamaru, with Akimichi Choji on the other side. Behind them sat Ino, Sakura, and Hinata. As Yagyu turned to chat with Ino, Sakura, and Hinata, Shikamaru quietly observed, casting a curious glance at the refined and ladylike Hinata. When did Yagyu get acquainted with the daughter of a prestigious clan? What happened during the break? However, watching Yagyu evenly divide his attention between Ino, Sakura, and Hinata, Shikamaru's gaze shifted to one of mild disdain. Their little boat is already crowded, yet Yagyu still wants to add more people. He's going to sink his ship sooner or later. When that time comes, Shikamaru was curious to see how Yagyu would handle the situation. Chapter 11, The Uchiha Clan Massacre. Time flew by, and 2 months passed in the blink of an eye. During these 2 months, Yagyu continued his usual routine, creating 2 shadow clones every day to train at home. His main body attended the ninja academy, always hoping for a stroke of luck, that he might drop something from Naruto, Sasuke Uchiha, or even Shikamaru Nara. During the holidays, Yagyu trained with Hinata, Ino, and Sakura. However, instead of going to secluded areas like the woods or other remote places, they began training at Yagyu's home. When the three girls first saw Yagyu's shadow clones, they were shocked, their eyes lighting up as they stared at him with admiration. They had already thought that Yagyu was impressive for mastering techniques that only genin were supposed to know in his first year. Even Ino and Sakura's parents had praised him, agreeing to let their daughters train with him during the holidays. However, they hadn't expected Yagyu to also know the shadow clone jutsu, a B-rank technique. Aside from Hinata, Ino, and Sakura couldn't even perform the three basic jutsu yet. After discovering Yagyu's true capabilities, Hinata, Ino, and Sakura were even more motivated to train. Just as Ino didn't want to be surpassed by Hinata or Sakura, the three girls didn't want to fall too far behind Yagyu, fearing he might leave them behind one day. Thus, during every break, Yagyu's house became their temporary training ground. Why only temporary? Because Yagyu wasn't training outdoors during this time. To be precise, he had decided not to train outside or take Hinata, Ino, or Sakura out until after the Uchiha clan was annihilated. He knew that Uchiha Obito would be wandering around Konoha during this period. With his Kamui ability to phase through matter, Obito was the biggest bug in the entire ninja world. He might not be able to beat you, but you definitely couldn't beat him. Even if you somehow managed to kill him once, he had a Izanagi as a respawn token. Unless you had an exceptionally well-hidden separate dimension, there was nowhere in the ninja world safe from him. Yagyu didn't want to risk training outside and accidentally catching Obito's attention. Better safe than sorry. Yagyu wasn't ready to be noticed by the major players just yet. Finally, the fateful day arrived. During the last class of the afternoon, Irika suddenly announced, "There will be a surprise test today. Meet at the training grounds after class." Ah, seriously? The classroom was immediately filled with groans, mainly from the weaker students. On the other hand, top students like Sasuke Uchiha were excited. After all, surprise tests counted towards their academic credits. The reason Yagyu had become the top student was that, besides getting full marks in the final exams, he also excelled in pop quizzes and surprise tests throughout the year. To dethrone him as the top student, Sasuke knew he would have to match Yagyu's scores in these tests. Even better, if he could prevent Yagyu from achieving full marks, he might be able to claim the title for himself. This was exactly how Sasuke had been overtaken last time. For Sasuke, these quizzes and surprise tests were a chance for redemption. With this in mind, Sasuke shot a challenging glance at Yagyu. By sheer coincidence, Yagyu was also looking at Sasuke, except his gaze was one of pity. If you were to ask who the most tragic character in the Naruto world was, Sasuke Uchiha would undoubtedly be one of them. Before the age of 7, Sasuke had everything. He was the chosen one, born into one of the greatest clans in the ninja world, with a father who was the clan leader, a genius brother, and himself the reincarnation of the Sage of Six Paths' son. But after the age of 7, Sasuke no longer lived for himself. He became consumed by a quest for vengeance, willing to sacrifice everything to kill his brother, Itachi Uchiha. And when he finally succeeded in killing Itachi and learned the truth about his clan's massacre, his desire for revenge and revolution was ultimately quashed by Naruto. In the end, Sasuke was left wandering the world, trying to atone for his sins. Naruto and Sasuke, the reincarnations of the sage's sons, were polar opposites, just like the yin and yang powers within them. One suffered early in life, while the other suffered later. No wonder their bond transcended mere friendship. If one of them had been female, they would have made an unstoppable couple. Though Yagyu knew Sasuke was about to experience tragedy and become the infamous, cursed Avenger, he had no intention of warning him. This was a major event orchestrated by the higher-ups in Konoha, far beyond the influence of someone like Yagyu. When the school bell rang, students hurried out of the academy, but the second-year Class 1 students headed to the training grounds for the surprise test. By the time the survival exercise ended, the sky had already darkened, and dusk had turned to night. For the first time, the students were dismissed so late, and instead of staying out to play, they hurried home. Sasuke did the same, rushing back as fast as he could. Watching his retreating figure, Yagyu knew that this lively, proud Sasuke Uchiha would soon be gone. The next time he would see Sasuke, he would be a brooding, honor-driven survivor of the Uchiha clan. After the Uzumaki and Senju clans, yet another ancient clan was about to be wiped out. Soon enough, the Sharingan would become a legendary bloodline. Yagyu sighed inwardly at the thought. After returning home, Yagyu had dinner, bathed, and went to bed early. The next morning, as soon as Yagyu stepped outside, he noticed something different in the village's atmosphere. All along the way, he saw villagers whispering to each other. As he passed, he frequently heard the word Uchiha. The news of the Uchiha clan massacre had already spread. It wouldn't be long before the entire Land of Fire and the rest of the ninja world heard about it. When Yagyu arrived at school, Sasuke's seat remained empty, even after the bell rang. "Irika-sensei, is Sasuke all right?" Some of the girls, who were clearly aware of the massacre, asked anxiously when Irika entered the classroom. Clearly, those who liked or had a crush on Sasuke feared that he might have perished as well. Irika reassured them, "Don't worry, Sasuke is fine. He's just unconscious and in the hospital. Once he wakes up, I'll go visit him." Hearing that Sasuke was safe, the girls breathed a sigh of relief, already planning to inform the support group during the next break. Little did they know just how deeply this incident would affect Sasuke. In fact, the colder and more distant Sasuke would eventually become even more popular among them. "I heard it was Sasuke's brother who wiped out the Uchiha clan," one girl whispered. "Really? Poor Sasuke," another replied. Ino, Sakura, and Hinata were also discussing the event. Meanwhile, Yagyu rested his chin on his hand, silently breathing a sigh of relief. The Uchiha clan was gone, which meant that Obito and Black Zetsu wouldn't be lurking around Konoha anymore. It was finally safe for him to resume outdoor training. Chapter 12, Konoha Year 59, Yagyu gains attention. When Sasuke Uchiha finally returned to school, 5 days had passed. Just as Yagyu expected, the Sasuke who returned had an aura of coldness around him. The darkness had already begun to take root. However, Sasuke's fan club didn't notice this. In fact, they thought this new, colder Sasuke was even cooler. The girls in Class 1 felt they were incredibly fortunate, having both the warm and gentle Yagyu and the cold and aloof Sasuke. They didn't know which one to choose. Watching Sasuke, who now exuded an intimidating presence and made his seatmate shrink away in fear, Yagyu fell into deep thought. Though Sasuke couldn't activate it at will yet, he had already awakened the Sharingan of the Uchiha clan. So, could this increase the chances of dropping the Sharingan or Indra's chakra from him? As Yagyu pondered this, Sasuke seemed to sense his gaze and suddenly turned to look at him. What a terrifying look. What's wrong with Sasuke? Ino and Sakura were both startled by Sasuke's piercing gaze. Yagyu, however, didn't flinch and calmly met Sasuke's stare. After a few seconds, Sasuke finally looked away. Yagyu knew that he had now become Sasuke's target. As the last remaining member of the Uchiha clan, Sasuke would take immense pride in his family's honor. He wouldn't allow anyone to belittle or look down on the Uchiha clan. Even more, Sasuke couldn't accept being overshadowed by someone else while he carried the Uchiha name. From now on, Sasuke would train and study with all his might, doing everything he could to claim the title of top student. This was exactly what Yagyu wanted. If it weren't for the need to keep a low profile around Naruto and Sasuke, Yagyu would have sparred with them every day by now. After all, these two reincarnations of the sage's sons were the greatest treasures of this era. If Yagyu could fully tap into these two gold mines, his ceiling would be nothing less than achieving the power of the Sage of Six Paths. Time passed like a fleeting horse, and soon it was March of Konoha Year 59. Almost 4 years had passed since the Uchiha clan's massacre. The news of the Uchiha clan, one of Konoha and the ninja world's 3 greatest clans, being wiped out had shocked the ninja world at the time. Of course, since Yagyu couldn't leave the village, he didn't know the full extent of the uproar. But with the Uchiha clan's demise, Konoha's strength, already waning, took another major hit. Yet strangely, none of the village's enemies took advantage of the situation, and the balance between the 5 great ninja villages remained intact. This was good news. If war had broken out, Yagyu's generation would undoubtedly have been sent to the battlefield early. If Yagyu hadn't awakened his game system, it wouldn't have mattered whether war broke out or not, as kids his age wouldn't be sent to the front lines anyway. But knowing his own potential and the strength he could one day achieve, Yagyu didn't want a war to break out, not yet. He wasn't strong enough to fight on the front lines, and there was always the risk that an enemy might send a powerful ninja to wipe out Konoha's new generation in secret. Getting eliminated before he had a chance to fully develop would be even more frustrating than mastering a powerful technique and getting taken out by a random shoe falling from the sky. The fact that the 5 great ninja villages chose to maintain the current balance was the best news for Yagyu. As Yagyu had expected, over the past 4 years, Sasuke had been constantly competing with him, trying to take the top student title away. For every pop quiz or surprise test, especially in taijutsu duels, Sasuke would actively request Iruka to make Yagyu his opponent. There was even an incident where Naruto provoked Sasuke, only to be instantly defeated by him. Seeing Sasuke behave as if he would pummel any other classmate if not allowed to fight Yagyu, Iruka had a hard time managing him. In the end, Iruka sought Yagyu's opinion, and Yagyu agreed readily. He had been wondering when he would get matched up with Sasuke again. So for nearly 4 years, in every test that involved taijutsu or, starting from the 3rd year, kunai combat, Sasuke had always been Yagyu's opponent. And every time, Sasuke had lost. No matter how hard Sasuke worked, Yagyu always worked harder. Yagyu, who had mastered the shadow clone jutsu in his 1st year, was constantly training, growing stronger every day. He had long surpassed the level required to graduate early. If not for the hope of getting lucky and dropping some valuable items over the 6 years, Yagyu would have already started sending a shadow clone to attend class, just like Itachi Uchiha had done. Without the ability to activate his Sharingan, Sasuke simply couldn't match Yagyu in any of the foundational skills of a ninja. As a result, the title of top student remained firmly in Yagyu's grasp every year. Being the top student year after year, outshining even the heirs of the great ninja clans, Yagyu's reputation had spread not only throughout the ninja academy but also caught the attention of several prominent figures. In particular, Yamanaka Inoichi and Hyuga Hayashi had begun to take a close interest in the boy who had won over their daughters. They had even secretly observed Yagyu's training sessions with Hinata, Ino, and Sakura. Seeing Yagyu teach the girls techniques typically reserved for genin, which they were able to master, both Inoichi and Hayashi were impressed. They no longer objected to their daughters spending time with him. Even the 3rd Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, had taken notice of Yagyu. With the example of the 4th Hokage fresh in his mind, Hiruzen placed great importance on the talents of civilian ninjas. Bloodline limits weren't everything, what mattered most was innate talent. Among the 4 Hokage, only the 1st Hokage possessed a bloodline limit. The fact that Yagyu was consistently able to outperform the heirs of the great ninja clans and hold onto the title of top student proved that his talent and potential were exceptional. If guided and nurtured, Yagyu could very well become a pillar of Konoha's future. As for Yagyu, he had no idea that his low-profile self had attracted so much attention from important figures. If he knew that he had already caught the eye of the Hokage, Yagyu would have breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't mind being noticed by Hiruzen Sarutobi, what worried him was being noticed by Danzo Shimura. Thankfully, his parents had both been Chunin of Konoha, firmly loyal to the Hokage faction. Since he was considered rooted in the right lineage, even Danzo wouldn't dare to abduct Yagyu for brainwashing without consequences. In such a small village, the political scheming was endless. There was no helping it. Hiruzen Sarutobi was living proof of the saying, prosperity doesn't last beyond 3 generations. Once, Konoha had been incredibly strong. The number of Kage-level ninjas couldn't be counted on one hand. But many of these powerful individuals had either been manipulated by Hiruzen and Danzo or had been driven away. Now that Hiruzen was the only one left holding the village together, he had finally realized the gravity of the situation. Chapter 13, The Final Big Exam, Master of Nurturing. On March 18, the annual final exam day arrived. This was also the last big exam for Yagyu and his classmates. In April, they would advance to the 6th grade, and by March next year, the final exam would be their graduation assessment. As usual, Yagyu woke up early that day. He began with his morning training in the courtyard, then showered and ate breakfast. After drinking a full glass of fresh milk, he headed straight for the Ninja Academy. "Yagyu, good morning." While walking to school, a familiar girl's voice called out from behind him. Immediately, Yagyu felt a weight on his back, causing him to lean forward slightly. A blonde girl had sneak attacked him from behind, jumping onto his back. "Good morning, Ino," Yagyu replied with a smile. He skillfully unhooked her arms from around his neck, placing her down before they continued walking side by side. As they walked, the sight of this handsome boy and beautiful girl together attracted many glances. Over the past 4 years, now at 11 years old, both Yagyu and Ino had undergone significant changes. Starting with height, Yagyu had initially been the same height as Sasuke, Uchiha and the others. However, after merging with Asura's chakra, Yagyu's growth had accelerated as if it had been boosted. Unlike Naruto, who suffered from malnutrition, Yagyu had inherited his parents' wealth, as well as annual pensions, ensuring he grew up healthy. Just like Naruto's growth spurt when he trained with Jiraiya and got proper nutrition, Yagyu went from being short to becoming one of the tallest in his class. Currently, Yagyu stood at 1.63 meters tall. While this height might not be impressive in Yagyu's previous world, or in a village like Kimogakure that emphasized physical training, in Konoha, he stood out. After all, even Sasuke Uchiha was just over 1.5 meters tall when he graduated. Yagyu was certain he would continue growing and could reach over 1.65 meters, maybe even surpass 1.70 meters by next year. By then, finding someone above 1.55 meters among the new generation would be difficult. Standing at 1.63 meters, Yagyu's features had matured quickly. His sharp and defined facial features, combined with his silver hair that lightly covered his ears and his gem-like red eyes, made him incredibly handsome. Paired with his mature demeanor, his gaze was deep and captivating, often making the hearts of young girls flutter with admiration. As they walked, countless young girls who had just started to awaken to romantic feelings shot envious looks at Ino, who walked beside Yagyu. They wished they could switch places with her. Over the years, Ino had changed dramatically as well. She had also shed her childishness, now standing at around 1.45 meters. Her golden hair often changed styles. Sometimes she wore it in the signature high ponytail from the original story, other times it was long and straight, and sometimes she even wore it in twin tails. This was all because Yagyu had once commented that Ino's aura would change depending on her hairstyle. Since then, Ino had become skilled at managing her hair, effortlessly switching between straight, high ponytail, twin tails, or even braided styles. Good morning, Yagyu. Yagyu-kun, good luck with the exam. As they arrived at the Ninja Academy, many classmates greeted Yagyu. Some were from his class, others from different classes. Unlike the cold and aloof Sasuke Uchiha or Niji Hyuga, Yagyu was extremely popular at the academy. Had his hair been blonde, he might have even inherited Minato Namikaze's little son nickname. Yagyu didn't ignore their enthusiasm. He responded with his usual patience and warm demeanor. This was all part of his persona. In the past, it was about making a good impression on the heirs of the great ninja clans. Now, it was all for Hiruzen Sarutobi to see. By outperforming the heirs of the major ninja clans and having a personality like Minato's, Hiruzen wouldn't just take him seriously but wouldn't let Danzo Shimura take him away either. This mask was Yagyu's way of protecting himself. Upon arriving in the classroom, Yagyu noticed that Sakura and Hinata had already arrived. Seeing Ino walk in with Yagyu, Sakura teasingly whispered to her, "No wonder when I went to your house, your mom said you had already left. But when I got to school, you weren't here. Looks like you went to wait for Yagyu again, huh?" "Cough, it's just a coincidence, Ino replied, lightly coughing to cover her embarrassment. Sakura merely rolled her eyes in response. "Good morning, Yagyu-kun," Hinata greeted, still using honorifics when addressing him. "Good morning, Hinata," Yagyu smiled and waved back. Just like Ino, both Hinata and Sakura had also undergone significant changes over the years. The most dramatic transformation was in Hinata. Unlike her short hair in the original story, Hinata had secretly grown her hair long after learning that Yagyu preferred long hair. Now, with her long, straight hair, black mesh shirt, and white jacket, Hinata looked like a smaller version of her appearance in the Shippuden arc of the original series. Even more impressive, Hinata had already surpassed her original Shippuden height of 1.5 meters, currently standing at 1.52 meters. Among the three girls, Hinata was now the tallest. This change was undoubtedly brought about by Yagyu. He had long known about Hinata's big eater trait, a characteristic that often correlated with strong ninja potential. Being able to eat a lot was seen as a blessing, a trait necessary for a strong ninja. During outdoor training, Yagyu often took Hinata, Ino, and Sakura hunting, cooking barbecue for them afterward. He purposefully pointed out Hinata's hidden trait during these meals. When Yagyu mentioned Hinata's Big Eater ability, she was so embarrassed that she almost fainted on the spot. However, after Yagyu praised her talent, the worry she had carried about eating too much in front of Yagyu and Ino vanished. Afterward, Yagyu helped her feel more comfortable with her appetite. The mental energy from her Byakugan and the physical energy from her hearty eating had not only caused Hinata to grow taller than expected, but it had also given her an immense amount of chakra. If Hinata wasn't still shy and reserved, she would have been a formidable rival to Sasuke, who only saw Yagyu as his competition. As for Sakura, she still sported her signature pink straight hair, wearing a red cheongsam top paired with various colored pants, looking similar to her appearance in the original series. But internally, she had also changed significantly. Having been rescued by Yagyu, Sakura had not developed her second, more aggressive personality. Instead, she remained ladylike, already showing hints of the refined demeanor of her older self in Boruto. Her exceptional chakra control talent had also been fully nurtured with Yagyu's help. If she still graduated with Naruto and Sasuke next year, Yagyu was certain her skills would greatly surprise them. Knowing that all of these changes in the girls were due to his influence filled Yagyu with a strong sense of accomplishment. If he had been born in the world of Pokemon, Yagyu believed he would have been a master at nurturing and training. Chapter 14, Rule-Free Battle, Unleashing Full Power. The exam started quickly, with the morning focused on cultural studies. For Yagyu, these questions posed no difficulty. Once the morning exam ended, Yagyu and the others hurried home to eat lunch, as there was no time for an afternoon nap. They had to return to the Ninja Academy for the next round of tests. The 5th grade exam had the most sections, while the 6th grade graduation exam would only involve one. The afternoon exam consisted of shuriken throwing, taijutsu duels, survival exercises, kunai close combat, and rule-free combat. Kunai close combat was easy to understand. It involved fighting with a kunai, either subduing or killing your opponent to claim victory. This was a basic skill taught from the 3rd grade onwards, as ninjas were tools of assassination. How could they function if they couldn't kill? Rule-free combat was a section introduced in the 5th grade. It was simple to grasp. You could use any means to defeat or kill your opponent. The exam started quickly, with the first round being shuriken throwing. Unlike the written exam that required grading, the afternoon sessions were graded on the spot. As expected, Yagyu scored full marks. In the taijutsu duels, Yagyu's opponent wasn't Sasuke Uchiha. Starting from the 4th grade, these exams were no longer child's play. While Irika could still choose the opponents for small quizzes and impromptu tests, the final exam required fairness and impartiality. Standing beside Irika in the exam arena was a Chunin, not Mizuki from the original story, but a female teacher skilled in medical ninjutsu. In the 3rd grade, the rules for taijutsu duels changed. It was no longer a matter of who fell first, but instead, you had to subdue your opponent or make them give up. Injuries were unavoidable during these duels. As the taijutsu exam began, Yagyu and the others drew lots to determine their opponents. Yagyu drew a female classmate as his opponent. She didn't give up, as surrendering meant 0 points. Yagyu didn't defeat her instantly but allowed several moves before defeating her in a gentlemanly manner. Interestingly, Sasuke's opponent was Naruto once again. For some reason, whenever opponents were chosen by lot, Sasuke often ended up fighting Naruto. This made Yagyu wonder if the fate of these two brothers somehow influenced the world's rules. In their taijutsu duel, Sasuke won, as expected. At this point, Naruto was still the dead last student, scoring low in all subjects and frequently leaving his written exams blank. If graduation depended on cumulative scores, Naruto would never graduate in his lifetime. Next came the kunai close combat, also determined by drawing lots. The atmosphere was completely different from the taijutsu duel. Irika and the medical teacher's serious expressions made it clear how intense this round was. After Irika blew the whistle, he only retreated a few steps, his eyes locked on the combatants, ready to intervene the moment something went wrong. Yagyu's opponent this time was a male classmate who often greeted him. "Thank you for the match." Just like with the female classmate earlier, Yagyu easily blocked his opponent's strikes with his kunai. Then, in an instant, he used the body flicker technique to disappear and reappeared behind his opponent, pressing the kunai against the back of his neck to end the match. "No wonder you're Yagyu, I didn't stand a chance." The nearly instantaneously defeated boy shook hands with Yagyu in the traditional reconciliation gesture, showing no sign of discouragement. Losing to Yagyu was something most of the class had grown accustomed to over the years, except for Sasuke and Naruto, who took their losses much harder. By now, Yagyu was seen as the unbeatable final boss in their eyes. Facing him in the kunai close combat exam was almost a good thing. It meant they didn't have to endure the pain of a prolonged battle. In the following matches, many students had their clothes or even skin slashed by kunai. If anyone appeared to be in life-threatening danger, Iruka would instantly step in and stop the match, declaring the student who was about to be killed as the loser. If kunai close combat hadn't been introduced in the 3rd grade, many students might have ended up crying from the pain. Yagyu still remembered that during the first kunai combat sessions, many classmates had been too scared to move, trembling as they held their kunai in place. After the kunai close combat round ended, the next exam didn't begin immediately. The injured students were treated first. Several students ended up with their bodies or faces wrapped in white bandages or covered in adhesive bandages. Some students had lighter injuries that healed almost instantly. Soon after, the next round of tests began. This time, it wasn't a survival exercise but rule-free combat. Yagyu and the others lined up to receive their equipment. This included ninja pouches filled with shuriken and kunai, along with gloves embedded with metal plates. After putting on their gloves and securing their ninja pouches, Yagyu and the others drew lots again. Once everyone had drawn their numbers, Iruka and the medical teacher organized the matches. When Yagyu saw his opponent, he couldn't help but pause slightly. Sasuke Uchiha, standing across from him, also froze for a moment before his face lit up with joy. That's right, Yagyu's opponent was Sasuke Uchiha. Finally, they were matched. Yagyu's excitement mirrored Sasuke's. Over the past few years, Yagyu had only fought Sasuke during small quizzes and impromptu tests. But starting from the 3rd grade final exams, they hadn't faced each other at all. And despite all of Yagyu's victories over Sasuke in those years, he hadn't managed to get anything special from him. Now, at last, they were matched up again, and in a rule-free duel no less. This would be the most valuable match of all. Not only were Yagyu and Sasuke eager, but so were all their classmates, as well as Iruka and the medical teacher. Everyone wanted to see who would emerge victorious between the fully powered Yagyu and Sasuke. As match after match concluded, the much-anticipated showdown finally arrived. This time, you're definitely going to lose. Standing on the open field, Sasuke faced Yagyu with confidence. Despite never having won against Yagyu, his face radiated arrogance as he declared, "I'm going to show you just how big the gap between us really is. I'm looking forward to it." "Don't let me down," Yagyu replied, smiling as he raised his index and middle fingers to form the confrontation seal. Sasuke did the same, excitement evident in his voice. "You won't be disappointed." Rule-free combat, 7th group, Yagyu vs Sasuke Uchiha. Begin. Seeing both of them form the confrontation seal, Iruka wasted no time and blew the whistle. Tweet. Chapter 15, The Red Light Orb, Bloodline Limit. Tweet. As the whistle blew, both Yagyu and Sasuke Uchiha moved simultaneously, their hands diving into their ninja pouches. Each clasped 3 shuriken between their fingers and hurled them at each other. The 6 shuriken clashed in midair, sparks flying briefly. Whoosh! Before the shuriken hit the ground, Yagyu and Sasuke's bodies blurred and disappeared, leaving only afterimages behind. The 2 shadows collided at speeds almost impossible to track with the naked eye. Appearing right in front of each other, Yagyu and Sasuke gripped their kunai in reverse, slashing and stabbing at each other with lightning speed. The strikes were incredibly fast, but each one was either blocked by the other's kunai or deflected by the iron plates on their gloves. As they grappled, both Yagyu and Sasuke occasionally kicked at each other, exploiting any opening they found. Whenever one of them found a weak spot, both utilized the body flicker technique or the substitution jutsu from the 3 basic jutsu to avoid the attack. Their battle dazzled the onlookers, showcasing the massive gap between themselves and the rest of the class. Their attack speed, movement, combat experience, and battle intelligence were on a completely different level. Even Iruka and the female teacher, who both feared Yagyu and Sasuke would sustain serious injuries, were amazed by their skill. It was undeniable, purely on fundamentals, both Yagyu and Sasuke had already mastered the skills needed to graduate from the Ninja Academy. When Iruka and the other teachers were their age, they weren't even close to being on the same level as these two prodigies. However, in the next moment, both Irika and the female teacher's expressions shifted to shock. The students watching were also stunned. After another clash, Sasuke, who had yet to land a significant hit on Yagyu, suddenly leapt back, putting distance between them. In midair, a confident smirk appeared on his face as he formed the seal of the serpent and shouted, "You've lost." Fire style, fireball jutsu. His hands formed seals at lightning speed, and Sasuke's cheeks puffed out before a small flame emerged from his mouth. The flame quickly grew into a massive fireball, hurtling toward Yagyu. The orange-red glow of the flames reflected on everyone's faces. At that moment, every student felt the intense heat radiating from the jutsu. Not good. Irika's face filled with concern as he prepared to step in and save Yagyu. But before he could act, his face shifted to one of disbelief. Yagyu also formed hand seals, his movements even faster than Sasuke's, and calmly said, "Water style, water wall." A stream of water shot from Yagyu's mouth, quickly forming a towering wall of water. It resembled a massive hand made of water, slapping down on the incoming fireball. Hisses. The sound of boiling water echoed, and thick steam engulfed Yagyu and Sasuke. The dense white mist created by the steam lingered for several seconds before finally dissipating. When the mist cleared, Yagyu and Sasuke were once again visible to everyone. Their reappearance marked the end of the rule-free duel. Sasuke stood frozen in place, his expression filled with disbelief. Yagyu, on the other hand, was standing behind him, holding a kunai to Sasuke's neck. Tweet. The whistle blew. The first to recover from shock, Irika, immediately announced the result: "The match is over. The winner is Yagyu. He's amazing. And ninjutsu." Sasuke and Yagyu both used ninjutsu. Is this their true power? They can already use ninjutsu. Yagyu and Sasuke could graduate early at this rate. Irika's voice brought everyone back to reality. Instantly, the training ground buzzed with astonished chatter. Exclamations and discussions filled the air from all sides. Meanwhile, Yagyu and Sasuke still stood in place. Sasuke hadn't recovered from the shock. He couldn't believe that even after using his fire-style jutsu, he still lost to Yagyu. And how did Yagyu manage to move behind him in the mist? Could it be that Yagyu also knew some sensory technique? In contrast, Yagyu's attention was drawn to a bright red light suddenly radiating from Sasuke's body. The light flickered briefly before a red orb shot out from Sasuke's form, hovering in the air before drifting down to Yagyu's feet, transforming into a floating red light orb. Once the red orb was automatically absorbed into his body, Yagyu snapped back to the present. "Thank you for the match," Yagyu said, extending his index and middle fingers toward Sasuke. Sasuke finally came to his senses at Yagyu's words. His gaze was filled with complex emotions as he looked at Yagyu before reluctantly extending his own fingers. After performing the reconciliation seal, Sasuke turned and walked away without a word. In the past, after every loss, Sasuke would show clear frustration and swear to defeat Yagyu next time. But now, Sasuke said nothing. It was evident that losing this no-holds-barred, full-powered match against Yagyu had dealt a severe blow to Sasuke's pride. Until Sasuke mastered a new ninjutsu or could activate his Sharingan at will, it was unlikely he would regain the arrogance and confidence he once had in front of Yagyu. Returning to the group, Yagyu half-heartedly responded to his classmates' excited questions, his focus elsewhere. In reality, his mind was on the virtual interface only he could see, specifically on the red orb in his inventory. A new level of rarity had appeared. Over the past few years, Yagyu had occasionally obtained other items, but they were always from white orbs. These orbs contained relatively ordinary things. The most valuable item he had gotten was the sensory technique from Sakura. This sensory technique had been Sakura's most significant growth over the past few years. It was how Yagyu had located Sasuke in the thick mist and moved behind him to claim victory. White orbs contained basic skills and techniques, things that could be learned later through training. Blue orbs, however, held innate abilities or talents that could be enhanced through effort or external forces. Gold orbs were legendary, containing world-altering powers. These were the definitions Yagyu had assigned to the various orb colors. And now, a new color and tier had appeared. Was it ranked above blue or below it? It couldn't possibly be above gold, as Sasuke's greatest treasure would be the chakra of Indra, the son of the Sage of Six Paths, on par with Naruto's legacy. Curious, Yagyu checked the information on the red orb. When the details popped up, Yagyu's heart surged with joy, and he barely managed to keep his expression under control. The red orb's description read, Bloodline Limit, Sharingan, Red. Chapter 16, Buying Colored Contacts, Kage Level Potential. Bloodline Limit, Sharingan. Seeing these words, Yagyu felt like he had just taken a sip of cold soda on a scorching summer day. His entire body tingled with a refreshing chill, sending goosebumps across his skin. Not even when his game system had first awakened and granted him Asura's chakra did Yagyu feel this way. Back then, Yagyu had only felt excitement and fear, uncertain whether the Asura chakra he'd obtained had any hidden traps left by the Sage of Six Paths. But now that everything was clear, the sight of Bloodline Limit, Sharingan, filled Yagyu with pure joy. Everyone knows that the world of Naruto could also be called the Tale of the Eye Powers and the Five Villages Conflicts. Rather than calling it a world dominated by bloodlines, it's more accurate to say it's dominated by ocular jutsu. The evolution of the Sharingan is the best representation of a ninja's power level. A single tomo represents a genin, 2 tomo a chunin, 3 tomo a jonin. Mangekyo Sharingan indicates Kage level, Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan indicates beyond Kage level, and the Rinnegan represents a sage level power. Mastering each stage of the Sharingan makes the wielder a top-tier ninja for that rank. The best examples are Itachi Uchiha and Madara Uchiha. They both developed their Mangekyo and Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan to the highest possible level, making them the very definition of overpowered at their respective tiers. Moreover, the Sharingan and Rinnegan provide numerous abilities, making them extremely powerful in combat. Yagyu had always hoped to obtain the same level of Indra's chakra from Sasuke Uchiha that matched Asura's chakra. That would give him the potential to reach sage-level strength. Unfortunately, that hadn't happened. But now that he had obtained the Bloodline Limit, Sharingan, Yagyu felt more than satisfied. If he could evolve the Sharingan to the Mangekyo level, it would naturally become the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, meaning he would never suffer from blindness. Since Yagyu possessed Asura's chakra, which gave him the Sage of Six Paths body, his ocular power consumption would be minimal, and his recovery would be far faster than even Obito Uchiha, who had Hashirama's cells implanted in him. Even if Yagyu were never able to extract Indra's chakra from Sasuke, he could follow Madara's path, implant Sasuke's cells into his body, and after decades, he might awaken the Rinnegan. Thinking this through made Yagyu eager to immediately fuse the Bloodline Limit, Sharingan. But a sliver of reason stopped him, and he found himself impatiently wanting to finish the exam as soon as possible. Half an hour later, the no-rules battles finally ended. The female teacher continued treating the injured students, while Irika listed the results of Yagyu and the others. Winners received full marks, while losers were scored based on their performance, receiving either low or high scores. Once the injured students had recovered, Yagyu and the others faced the final exam, the survival exercise. Just like in the first year, the survival exercise for 5th graders was essentially a game of hide-and-seek. However, unlike first-year students who only knew the basic cloak of invisibility technique, 5th-year students had learned all the fundamentals. If they were skilled enough, they could use the body replacement jutsu and body flicker technique to avoid being found by Irika. As long as they weren't caught within the time limit, they would receive full marks. Moreover, unlike the first year, where Irika would go easy on the students, he now took finding them seriously. That said, as long as the students' hiding methods weren't too clumsy, Irika would still show some leniency. Naturally, Yagyu earned full marks in this round as well. By the time the survival exercise ended and the scores were posted, the sun had already set, leaving only traces of twilight in the sky. After parting ways with Ino and the others and agreeing to train together the next day, Yagyu didn't head home right away. Instead, he visited a shop to buy a pair of colored contact lenses. Yes, colored contacts exist in this world. In the original story, when Kakashi removed his mask, the camera operator used colored contacts to disguise his appearance. For years, Yagyu had wanted to extract both Hinata's Byakugan and Sasuke's Sharingan. However, these two ocular jutsus are among the most famous dojutsu in the world. Their renown, even greater than the Rinnegan, made them household names. If Yagyu actually revealed that he had the Byakugan or Sharingan, it would be impossible to hide it in the Leaf Village. After all, he was just an orphan commoner. If his powers were exposed, unless the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, personally protected him, Danzo would undoubtedly come knocking at his door. Even if Danzo didn't, Hayashi Hyuga surely would. But Yagyu couldn't stand the thought of possessing these powerful dojutsu and not using them. So from a young age, Yagyu had already been considering ways to avoid exposure. He came up with two solutions. One was to always wear sunglasses. While this behavior might seem odd, it wouldn't be considered too strange. Aside from the Aburame clan, there were plenty of other people in the village who wore sunglasses, such as Konohamaru's teacher, Ebisu, a special jonin of the Leaf. However, after shopping around the village and discovering that colored contact lenses were available, Yagyu abandoned the sunglasses idea. Compared to colored contacts, sunglasses weren't as reliable. If, during a fight, someone shattered the sunglasses, Yagyu would either have to eliminate every witness or find a way to hide his dojutsu powers. Plus, sunglasses would obscure his good looks, and seeing things in constant darkness without using his dojutsu would be too inconvenient. So, Yagyu opted for colored contacts. When Yagyu returned home, he eagerly headed straight to the bathroom, stood before the mirror, and summoned his virtual interface to fuse the bloodline limit, Sharingan. The red light orb emerged from the inventory, dissolving into a beam of light that penetrated Yagyu's body. And then, nothing. Just like when he fused with Azura's chakra, Yagyu's body experienced no immediate changes. In fact, this time, it felt even less dramatic than when he fused with Azura's chakra. After absorbing Azura's chakra, Yagyu's chakra flow had at least improved from a mere trickle to the steady stream of a faucet. But after fusing the bloodline limit, Sharingan, Yagyu's appearance and internal energy didn't change at all. The anticipated black tomo markings didn't appear in his already beautiful red eyes. Yagyu stood dumbfounded for a moment before realizing why. Bloodline limit, Sharingan. From the description, Yagyu understood that what he had acquired wasn't Sasuke Uchiha's Sharingan but rather the Uchiha clan's bloodline limit. Bloodline limits, such as the Sharingan, require a conscious awakening before they can be used. Understanding this, Yagyu quickly summoned his virtual interface. In the section for bloodline limits, it no longer showed a blank field. Instead, 3 new words appeared: bloodline limit, Sharingan. That's right, just the Sharingan. The sage's body didn't count as a bloodline limit. The fact that his Sharingan required awakening was excellent news for Yagyu. It meant that when his Sharingan evolved to the Mangekyo level, its abilities wouldn't be identical to Sasuke's but would instead develop unique jutsu of his own. The thought filled Yagyu with eager anticipation for the future. The stamina provided by the sage's body and the combat power of the Sharingan. Yagyu's potential had already reached beyond Kage-level heights. Chapter 17, The Year Konoha 60, Shikamaru's Bold Guess. Time flows like water, the years pass swiftly. Another winter has given way to spring, and now it is officially Konoha Year 60. March 18th, a familiar date. It felt as though Yagyu's no-rules battle against Sasuke Uchiha from the previous year had just happened yesterday, and it was still a hot topic among their classmates. It was especially fresh in everyone's mind how, when school started in April, the students had spread word of Yagyu and Sasuke's epic fight. It led to countless underclassmen coming to sneak peeks at them through the windows. After all, being able to use elemental ninjutsu in the 5th grade was mind-blowing. Many students still hadn't even mastered the basic transformation technique, and their chakra reserves were so low that they could only use such techniques a few times. On the other hand, Sasuke Uchiha had demonstrated the Fireball Jutsu, a C-rank fire-style ninjutsu, while Yagyu had used the Water Wall, a B-rank water-style ninjutsu. Everyone believed that Yagyu and Sasuke already had the ability to graduate early. However, Irika didn't submit a request to the 3rd Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, for Yagyu and Sasuke to graduate early. Instead, he let them continue attending the academy for another year. When they were promoted to the 6th grade, both Yagyu and Sasuke became more reserved and low-key. During pop quizzes and unannounced tests, Sasuke stopped actively requesting Irika to spar against Yagyu. Instead, he remained quietly in the background, training diligently. Yagyu followed suit. After their no-rules battle, Yagyu had figured out the mechanics of the game system's drop rates. When bound by formal rules, the hidden scoring system would lower his drop rate, making it much harder for him to get valuable items. Only in all-out battles, where both sides were using their full strength, could he maximize his score and increase both the drop rate and the likelihood of getting rare items. In the Ninja Academy, only no-rules battles allowed him to go all out. Such battles didn't happen during pop quizzes or surprise tests. And in the 6th grade, there were no more big exams, just the graduation exam. Realizing that he wouldn't be able to farm Indra's chakra from Sasuke for another year, Yagyu stopped attending school in person and began sending a shadow clone instead. His real body stayed at home, training in ninjutsu and increasing his strength. Other than occasionally training with Hinata, Ino, and Sakura during school breaks, Yagyu's real body almost never left home. But today was different. For the first time in a while, Yagyu skipped his usual morning training and didn't create a shadow clone. Instead, he dressed up carefully before heading out. Over the past year, Yagyu had grown a lot, being in the midst of his growth spurt. His height had shot up from 163 centimeters to 168 centimeters, making him tower over most of his classmates. With a ninja forehead protector, anyone unfamiliar with Yagyu would think he had already been a genin for several years. After all, in Shippuden, Naruto's height was only 166 centimeters, which made Yagyu 2 centimeters taller than him now. When Yagyu arrived at the academy, he didn't run into Hinata, Ino, or Sakura along the way. Over the past year, the 3 girls had realized that it was usually a shadow clone attending school, so they stopped trying to accidentally bump into him on the way. Yagyu, good morning. Yagyu, did you have breakfast? Once Yagyu sat down in the classroom, both Hinata and Sakura greeted him, while Ino asked a question only the 4 of them understood as code. Yeah, I did, Yagyu nodded. Hearing this, the eyes of all 3 girls lit up, and they eagerly began chatting with Yagyu. The phrase, I had breakfast, was their code for, this is my real body. After all, shadow clones don't eat. Seeing Hinata, Ino, and Sakura suddenly become much more enthusiastic, Nara Shikamaru, who was slumped over on his desk beside Yagyu, had a sharp glint flash in his eyes. So, it wasn't a falling out after all. Yagyu hadn't been attending in person this entire past year. Shadow clone jutsu. This guy had already mastered 2 B-rank jutsu. No, more importantly, Yagyu's chakra was strong enough to create a clone that could last an entire morning and afternoon, even completing all the exams. Just how much chakra does he have? Even someone as usually calm as Shikamaru felt a twinge of shock. No wonder neither Sasuke nor anyone else had been able to challenge Yagyu's top spot as the class's #1 student all these years. This guy was leagues ahead of them in terms of strength. What had happened to that purpose-driven kid from before that turned him into the person he was now? At that moment, Shikamaru's curiosity about Yagyu reached its peak, but he didn't ask any questions. He knew Yagyu wouldn't answer. But one thing was for sure, Yagyu definitely had a Kekkei Genkai. And that Kekkei Genkai might be one that skipped generations. After all, Shikamaru couldn't think of any other explanation for such a drastic change in someone's abilities. Suddenly, a bold idea flashed through Shikamaru's mind. Silver hair, red eyes, and an enormous chakra reserve. Could Yagyu be a descendant of the Senju clan that had integrated into Konoha? If he remembered correctly, the second Hokage had those exact same hair and eye colors. Could Yagyu's massive chakra reserve mean that he had awakened the Senju bloodline? Yagyu, of course, had no idea what Shikamaru was thinking. If he did, he would have been startled. The guess was frighteningly close to the truth. Too bad no one could ever guess the existence of a mysterious game system. However, Shikamaru's theory provided a convenient cover for Yagyu's sage body. If Shikamaru had thought of it, others would surely come to the same conclusion. Once Yagyu's secret of having a massive chakra reserve was exposed, anyone who had seen the second Hokage in person or in photographs would assume Yagyu was a descendant of the Senju clan, not that he was hiding some greater secret. For Yagyu, this was great news. As the minutes ticked by, it was finally time for the graduation exam. The graduation exam is the clone technique. When I call your name, come forward, Irika announced, appearing briefly at the classroom door before leaving. Shortly after, a Chunin wearing a green vest showed up, holding a list of names. He started calling them out, Kiba Inazuka, One by one, the students who had spent 6 years together with Yagyu responded and left the classroom, never to return. Ino and Hinata were among those called as well. Yagyu. Before long, Yagyu heard his name. Standing up, Yagyu glanced at Sakura and said, "Good luck. I'll wait for you at the front entrance." You too." "Good luck, Yagyu," Sakura replied with a smile and a nod. Yagyu exited the classroom and made his way to the exam room, where Irika and Mizuki were seated at a table. With a quick glance at Mizuki's friendly expression, Yagyu wasted no time forming hand seals, clone technique. With a poof sound like a balloon bursting, white smoke billowed from the exam room. When the smoke cleared, Yagyu emerged holding a ninja forehead protector. After exiting the building, he found Hinata and Ino waiting at the front entrance. Soon after, Sakura came out with her own forehead protector in hand. The group didn't leave the academy immediately. They waited in silence for the graduation exam to officially end. After all, they still had to take their official ID photos. Only once their photos were taken and their files entered into the system would they officially become genin. Of course, if their assigned Jonin sensei didn't approve of them, they would still be sent back to school for another year of training. Chapter 18, Team Assignments, Who will be in Yagyu's group? After Yagyu and the others finished taking their profile photos, the school gate was crowded with parents who had come to pick up their children. Some of the students, holding their ninja forehead protectors, were receiving praise from their parents. Others, who had failed the graduation exam, ran into their parents' arms in tears, being either comforted or scolded. Just like in the original story, Naruto sat on the swing, having failed the graduation exam. His expression was filled with deep disappointment. Many people noticed Naruto, and some shot him hateful glares, while others looked at him with disgust before turning away. Whispering could be heard among the parents as they gossiped about him. Yagyu also saw this, but he didn't go over to comfort Naruto. Despite how bad things looked for Naruto now, Yagyu knew that after today, Naruto's rise would begin. Meanwhile, Sasuke Uchiha's fate was about to take a darker turn. After parting ways with Hinata, Ino, and Sakura, Yagyu returned home. After dinner and a bath, Yagyu lay on the couch on his balcony, gazing at the star-filled sky and the high-hanging moon. As he admired the night sky, black shadows occasionally darted across the rooftops. On any other night, there were usually ninja on patrol who would flash across the rooftops with the body flicker technique. But tonight, the shadows moving across the rooftops were far more numerous than usual. Moreover, whenever one of these shadows stopped, they were all wearing green vests, signifying that they were at least Chunin ranked. From their behavior, it seemed like they were searching for something. Yagyu knew exactly what they were looking for. They were searching for Naruto. As expected, Naruto was either in the middle of learning or had already learned the multi-shadow clone jutsu. Like the Rasengan, this A-rank forbidden jutsu would become one of Naruto's signature techniques in the future. The shadow clones, Rasengan, and the Kyubi chakra mode. Naruto didn't have as many flashy techniques as Sasuke, but with the help of his sage body and the Kyubi, very few people could withstand his three-pronged attack. Yagyu was also quite envious of the multi-shadow clone jutsu. His own shadow clone jutsu could also create a large number of clones, but it took him time to do so. He couldn't create hundreds or thousands of clones in one go like the multi-shadow clone jutsu. The multi-shadow clone jutsu uses a massive amount of chakra to instantly create hundreds or thousands of clones. It was one of the jutsu developed by Tobirama Senju and is particularly suited to those with the sage body. Though envious, Yagyu had no intention of intervening in this event. It's often said that those involved in the situation can't see clearly, but outsiders can. The Hokage's office, being the most important place in Konoha, would surely be under constant watch by the Umbu. And something as important as the scroll of seals wouldn't just be lying around for anyone to take. Naruto only succeeded in obtaining the scroll because Hiruzen Sarutobi allowed it. The multi-shadow clone jutsu was Sarutobi's way of compensating the son of a hero, and it was a jutsu perfectly suited for Naruto. Naruto could steal and learn it without consequence, but if Yagyu dared to do the same, he'd probably be hauled off to the interrogation unit as soon as the incident ended. So, Yagyu had no interest in getting involved. After enjoying the starry sky for a while, Yagyu returned to his room to rest. The next morning, after washing up, Yagyu tied his ninja forehead protector around his arm and, after breakfast, headed out. Since school was officially on break, and only students who passed the graduation exam were attending, the ninja academy was unusually quiet. However, Yagyu still ran into several classmates along the way who greeted him, some from his class and others from neighboring ones, all proudly wearing their forehead protectors. Yagyu, good morning. When Yagyu entered the classroom, Hinata, Ino, and Sakura, as usual, had arrived early. Wherever they went, the three girls were always together. This trio had become quite famous at the academy. Thanks to them fending off fan groups for him, Yagyu didn't have to deal with being surrounded by a large crowd of girls like Sasuke often was. Due to their close-knit friendship, Ino, Sakura, and Hinata were often shunned by other girls at the academy. Many of the other girls in their class even isolated them. Thankfully, all three of them ranked in the top 10 of their year, or else a certain clique of girls would have probably found a way to teach them a lesson. After greeting Yagyu, Ino rested her chin on her hands, full of anticipation. We're about to be assigned to our teams. I wonder if we'll end up in the same group as you, Yagyu. Sakura and Hinata also looked hopeful. Before Yagyu could respond, Shikamaru, leaning on his desk with his head propped on one hand, yawned and said, maybe Sakura or Hinata, but you, Ino, not a chance. Why not? Ino asked. It's simple. It's because our dads are too well known, Shikamaru replied lazily. If Choji, you, and I weren't all the same age, then maybe you'd have a chance. But since we've been destined to be on the same team since birth, regardless of our grades. Just watch, our Jonin sensei won't be an ordinary Jonin. His job will be to train us to become the next generation of Ino Shikacho. No way. Ino shouted in frustration. So I've been assigned since I first enrolled. More like since we were born, Shikamaru added, his words crushing her hopes even more. Curious, Yagyu asked, so, Shikamaru, can you guess who might be on my team? You're asking the right person. I've actually thought about that. Shikamaru perked up, clearly interested in the question. I think there's a good chance that you'll be paired with either Sakura or Hinata. Why's that? Ino quickly asked, while Sakura and Hinata both looked delighted. Well, you four have been practically inseparable for the past few years, Shikamaru explained. So, in terms of teamwork, you're already ahead of the other girls. Then there's your individual strengths. Yagyu is an all-rounder, while the three of you are more support-oriented. Considering the rapport you've built with Yagyu, it's very likely that either Hinata or Sakura will be assigned to the same team as him. Shikamaru's logic made perfect sense, and Sakura and Hinata's faces lit up with joy. Sakura, unable to hold back her excitement, asked, Shikamaru, do you think I or Hinata have a better chance? It's you, Sakura, Shikamaru replied, pointing at her. It's similar to my situation with Ino and Choji. There are other students from well-known clans in our class. Most of them will probably be grouped with others based on their specialties. This way, the village doesn't have to allocate too many resources, just assign a powerful Jonin to lead them, and that's enough. Hinata has the Byakugan, which is a famous sensory ability. If I'm right, the best match for her team would be Kiba from the Inuzuka clan and Shino from the Aburame clan. Together, they'd form the new sensory unit. Hearing this, Hinata's spirits immediately dropped. Meanwhile, Sakura's happiness was written all over her face, a beaming smile that contrasted with her two friends' more somber expressions. Luckily, thanks to Yagyu's influence, the three had become very close over the years. If they had the same shallow friendship they did in the original series, things might have escalated into a fight. Wow, Shikamaru, you've really inherited the intelligence of the Nara clan. Yagyu clapped his hands, thoroughly impressed by Shikamaru's deduction. Chapter 19, Unexpected Team Assignments, Yagyu's Importance. Just as Shikamaru Nara had analyzed, Yagyu had also thought about who his teammates might be. He used a process of elimination. Excluding himself, the most important students in the class were the Konoha 9, the 9 strongest students. Among them, Ino, Shikamaru, and Choji were guaranteed to be placed together. As Shikamaru had mentioned, their fathers were too famous, the entire ninja world knew about the Ino Shikacho combination. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, would never miss the chance to cultivate the next generation of Ino Shikacho. This was evident by how he had assigned his own son, Asuma Sarutobi, to guide the new Ino Shikacho. After ruling them out, Yagyu considered the remaining 6 of the Konoha 9, Naruto, Sasuke, Kiba, Shino, Hinata, and Sakura. Naruto and Sasuke were special cases, and it was clear that Sarutobi wouldn't separate them. That left Kiba, Shino, Hinata, and Sakura. Among them, Hinata, Kiba, and Shino all came from prominent clans, and it made sense that they would be grouped together with a skilled jonin leader to satisfy their powerful parents. Thus, Sakura was the most likely candidate to be Yagyu's teammate. However, if Sakura was placed in Team 7 with Naruto and Sasuke, that would leave a vacancy. If Sarutobi decided to group Yagyu with Sakura, then someone ordinary would need to fill the third spot on Naruto and Sasuke's team. Yagyu also considered the possibility that Sakura would still be placed in Team 7, and he might be teamed up with 2 average students, or even assigned to the Umbu. No matter the outcome, Yagyu wasn't concerned. Graduating meant the plot of the story was starting, and the new cycle of destiny between Ashura and Indra had begun. The destined battle between these reincarnations would plunge the ninja world into chaos. No matter who his teammates were, Yagyu was confident that he would grow quickly. As Yagyu and his friends chatted, more and more students began to arrive. Naruto's appearance surprised many, but no one mocked him. Unfortunately, this meant the famous scene didn't happen. Without a girl he liked, Naruto, though still irritated by Sasuke's cool demeanor, didn't jump in front of him like in the original story. So, there was no legendary kiss fueled by classmates. Yagyu was a bit disappointed. Once all the students had arrived, Irika entered the classroom. Congratulations, from today, you are all officially genin. Looking around the room, Irika, who had been with these students for 6 years, wore an expression of deep pride. He suppressed his emotions, smiled, and said, however, you still have much to learn. Until you can stand on your own as ninja, you'll be placed in teams of 3 under a jonin instructor who will teach you how to become true ninja. Now, let's begin the team assignments. For Class 1. One by one, Irika called out names. As students were called, they either looked excited or disappointed. Soon enough, they reached Team 7. Team 7, Uzumaki Naruto, Uchiha Sasuke, Haruno Sakura. As Irika called the last name, Yagyu and his friends' expressions changed slightly. Sakura, who had been smiling ever since the team assignment started, froze. Shikamaru rubbed his chin, surprised. Looks like I was wrong. Things are going to get interesting. Yagyu was also surprised. Could it be that he would really be grouped with 2 ordinary students? Was the significance of being the top student so low? Or was Sarutobi planning to recruit him into the Umbu? Irika's next words caused Yagyu's expression to shift again, while Hinata's face lit up with joy. Team 8, Yagyu, Abirame Shino, Hyuga Hinata. Team 9. Team 10, Nara Shikamaru, Akimichi Choji, Yamanaka Ino. I can't believe it. I got so much wrong, Shikamaru muttered, rubbing his chin. His gaze fell on Kiba, who was playing with his dog Akamaru, seemingly unconcerned with who his teammates were. Shikamaru couldn't help but feel a bit sorry for him. Poor guy, he's been left out. Excluding the Uchiha clan, which had been wiped out, there were 6 prominent ninja clans in the class. As Shikamaru had predicted, the new generation of Ino Shikacho had not been split up. However, what seemed like a certain grouping, Kiba, Shino, and Hinata, ended up with only Shino and Hinata together. Kiba didn't end up in a team with Sasuke either. This meant that Kiba's team would be made up of ordinary students. With only one clan heir in the team, it meant Kiba's jonin instructor probably wouldn't be a high-profile leader. Unless, of course, one of his clansmen personally requested to guide him. In any case, it was clear that Kiba had been left behind. Even Yagyu hadn't expected to take Kiba's place. Team 8 was essentially the strongest sensory team of the new generation. Its importance was clear when Hiruzen Sarutobi assigned Kurenai Yui, a skilled jonin, to be their instructor. If Asuma Sarutobi hadn't died in the original story and had lived to the time of Boruto, he and Kurenai would have become the mentors to the heirs of the 6 great ninja clans, including Ino Shikacho, Abirame, Inuzuka, and Hyuga. With connections like that, even if Asuma never became Hokage, he would still have had great influence in the village. In Yagyu's eyes, Team 8, like Ino Shikacho, was one of the teams that Sarutobi would never break up. To his surprise, Sarutobi had chosen to place Yagyu in Kiba's spot. This bold move, which would certainly upset the Inuzuka clan, surprised Yagyu. Did the third Hokage really believe so strongly in his potential? Or perhaps, had Hiruzen Sarutobi been secretly watching him train all these years with his crystal ball jutsu? Can that jutsu even spy inside houses? The thought that Sarutobi might have seen him secretly practicing certain jutsu at home made Yagyu's heart sink. Team 12. After calling out the final team, Iruka put down the list. He took one last look around the classroom, knowing it would be the last time he'd see them all together, a trace of sadness in his eyes. But he kept a smile on his face as he spoke, "Be sure to get along well with your new teammates. From now on, they'll be the comrades you'll fight alongside. Your Jonin instructor will come to pick you up shortly. I hope that the next time we meet, you'll all have become outstanding ninja." With that, Iruka quickly left the classroom. No one paid much attention to his departure, nor did anyone understand Iruka's emotions at that moment. The students were all too focused on their futures as ninja, eagerly discussing their assigned Jonin instructors and speculating on how strong they might be. "Congratulations, Hinata," Ino said, her face full of envy. "I didn't expect you to be placed in Yagyu's team." At her words, Hinata immediately lowered her head, twiddling her fingers. A close observer might notice the slight upward curve of her lips, revealing her joy. Sakura, on the other hand, looked like a defeated puppy. She sat right behind Shikamaru and glared at the back of his head. She was so frustrated she almost wanted to awaken her second personality and punch Shikamaru into oblivion. His analysis had raised her hopes sky high, only for reality to pour cold water on them. The disappointment, it was too much. Chapter 20, The Humble Dog Licker, Main Quest. Third team, come with me. I'm your Jonin instructor. Not long after Iruka had left the classroom, a Jonin wearing a green vest appeared at the doorway. Fifth team, follow me. As soon as the third team had left, another Jonin appeared at the entrance. The classroom, which had been full of students, quickly began to empty. In no time, only about a dozen students were left in the classroom. Unlike Kakashi, who was known for being late, Kurenai Yuhi did not keep Yagyu and his team waiting. Soon, a voluptuous woman with black hair and striking red eyes, like Yagyu's, appeared at the classroom door. After scanning the room, her gaze fell on Yagyu, and she smiled, "Team 8, come with me. I'm your Jonin instructor." Before Yagyu and his team could stand up, another bearded man appeared at the door and also looked toward Yagyu's group. "Team 10, come with me." As Kurenai's admirer, Asuma Sarutobi had clearly left the Hokage's office at the same time as her. "We're heading out, Sakura. Don't forget to visit us during the break," Ino said. "Yeah, see you," Sakura replied. Yagyu and the others said goodbye to Sakura, who was forcing a smile, and then left the classroom. "Kurenai, should we let the kids meet each other first?" Asuma asked, his intentions obvious to anyone paying attention. Following behind them, Shikamaru slightly furrowed his brow. Their Jonin instructor didn't seem very reliable. Kurenai glanced at Asuma, who had already lit a cigarette again, and frowned. "There's no need. You already know how their relationships are. Also, Asuma, could you stop smoking in front of ladies?" Sorry. Asuma hurriedly put out his cigarette, looking so humble that his image as a Jonin crumbled instantly in the eyes of Team 8 and Team 10. Ino was particularly exasperated. Not only was she not in Yagyu's team, but now her Jonin instructor was a chain smoker. Yagyu, however, was deep in thought. Was it possible that their relationship hadn't advanced yet? If he remembered correctly, in the original story, when Itachi Uchiha returned to the village, Kurenai and Asuma were already dating and happened to meet Kakashi on the street, right? That was after the Konoha Crush incident. Could it be that their relationship didn't progress until after Hiruzen Sarutobi's death? Thinking about this possibility, Yagyu looked at Asuma with a hint of disdain. Good grief, using a tragedy to get close to someone. How pathetic of a licking dog could you be? Hey, what kind of looks are you kids giving me? Asuma asked, blushing as he noticed the piercing stares of Yagyu and the others. Ino, who had never been subtle, gave him a pitiful look, almost making Asuma lose his composure. Only now did Asuma realize how badly he had messed up his image in front of the students. Great, now his authority as their teacher was in ruins. Goodbye, Yagyu. Don't forget to visit me at the flower shop when you have time, Ino said as she waved goodbye. After leaving the school building, Team 8 and Team 10 went their separate ways. Kurenai didn't take her team to one of the school's training grounds. Instead, she led Yagyu, Shino, and Hinata out of the village's main street to a deserted training ground in the wilderness. This training ground was very similar to the one used by the original Team 7. In fact, most of the outdoor training grounds were nearly identical. Stopping in front of a wooden post, Kurenai turned to face her 3 students and smiled, "Before you can handle missions on your own, we'll be spending a lot of time together. Let's introduce ourselves. I'll go first as an example. My name is Kurenai Yui. You can call me Kurenai-sensei. My specialty is genjutsu. My favorite foods are sake, vodka, and wasabi octopus, and I dislike cake. My dream is to become a kunoichi as powerful as Lady Tsunade." After she finished her introduction, Kurenai's gaze shifted to Yagyu. Unlike elite jonin like Kakashi, Asuma, and Guy, Kurenai had only recently been promoted to jonin. When she learned that she would be a jonin instructor along with the others, she felt a bit slighted when Kakashi and the others didn't include her in their bets on who would produce the best students. Though she kept her feelings to herself, deep down, she was determined to prove them wrong. When she received her student list from the 3rd Hokage, Kurenai's focus wasn't on Hinata, the heiress of the Hyuga clan, nor on Shino, the heir of the Aburame clan. Her attention was on Yagyu, the top student in their year. After learning that Yagyu had consistently outperformed the heirs of several prominent clans, Kurenai placed her hopes on him. She was determined to train Yagyu into an exceptional shinobi and use the Chunin exams or other contests to show up Kakashi and the others. Yagyu, unaware of Kurenai's thoughts, saw her gaze fall on him and immediately introduced himself. "My name is Yagyu. I know a variety of jutsu, but I'm best at water-style techniques. I like spicy food and dislike sour and bitter things. My dream is to become an excellent ninja." The first part of his introduction was true, but the part about his dream was just to satisfy Kurenai. In truth, Yagyu's dream was to collect all the valuable powers and become a well-rounded, sage-level ninja. This had been his goal since awakening his game system, his main quest. "I'm Hinata Hyuga. I specialize in the Hyuga clan's gentle fist and sensory techniques. My favorite foods are red bean soup, cinnamon rolls, and cold dishes. I dislike shrimp and crab. My dream is also to become an excellent ninja." Hinata's voice was soft as she introduced herself, but she didn't bow her head or show any signs of shyness. Her dream was no longer to gain her father's approval. Thanks to Yagyu's influence, Hinata hadn't made Hayashi Hyuga feel disappointed in her. Hayashi and Inoichi Yamanaka had secretly observed their children's training more than once, so they knew exactly how strong their children had become. Compared to other ninja clan heirs, Hinata was more than competent. Under Yagyu's influence, she wasn't as timid or self-deprecating as she had been in the original story. However, her true dream was still a mystery to everyone. After Hinata's introduction, Shino Aburame spoke up. "My name is Shino Aburame. I specialize in my clan's secret techniques. I like vegetable salads and winter melon, and I dislike foods that are too strong in flavor. My dream is to discover a new species of insect." "Very good, I now know your specialties and preferences." Kurenai nodded approvingly and smiled. "But I still don't know much about your skills. So, tomorrow at 8 a.m., meet me here. We're going to have a survival training exercise. For now, you're dismissed." With that, Kurenai vanished in a blur of speed. Chapter 21, A World for Two with Hinata. "Yagyu, should we come up with a battle plan or set some traps here?" Shino Aburame asked after Kurenai left, seeking Yagyu's opinion. This action showed that Shino had ceded the position of Team 8's leader to Yagyu. In the original story, Kiba Inuzuka seemed to be the leader of Team 8. However, in reality, Shino was the backbone of the team. For minor matters, Shino would let Kiba make decisions. But when it came to more important situations, Shino would not back down and could assert authority over both Hinata and Kiba. But now, Shino had willingly stepped aside, choosing to act as Yagyu's second-in-command, not because Yagyu was the top student, but because he had no choice. Unless Shino wanted to be isolated, he had to concede. Hinata would naturally follow Yagyu's lead now that they were in the same team. It would be 2 against 1, so if Shino wanted to stay in Team 8, he had to step aside. Yagyu was pleased with Shino's insight and smiled. It's still early, and Kurenai-sensei didn't start the test right away, which means she's giving us time to prepare. However, even if we work together and set traps, there's no way we can win against Kurenai-sensei, who's a jonin. So, the main purpose of this survival exercise is, as Kurenai-sensei said, to assess our abilities and teamwork. No need to set traps. If we get caught in Kurenai-sensei's genjutsu, those traps could backfire on us. Let's share our individual strengths, come up with a simple plan, and give it our all. Unlike Kakashi, Kurenai hadn't threatened them with the idea that failing the survival exercise would result in being sent back to the academy. Only students who were truly lacking in skill or unwilling to cooperate with their teammates would be sent back for retraining. For Yagyu and his team, who were all top students, even if their teamwork wasn't great, they wouldn't be sent back because there was nothing more the academy could teach them. That's why Kurenai didn't use the threat of being sent back as a motivator like Kakashi did. In fact, she cherished her talented students too much for that. Noticing this, Yagyu felt confident. All right, Shino agreed with Yagyu's approach. As they walked back along the path, they discussed their abilities and jutsu. When Yagyu finished explaining his techniques, Hinata glanced at his profile with admiration in her eyes. Shino, though outwardly calm, was likely shocked beneath his sunglasses. If Shino had removed his glasses, his pupils would likely have shrunk in surprise. In his mind, Shino was shaken. He had thought Yagyu's mastery of the B-rank water release, water wall at such a young age was impressive enough. But now it seemed that Yagyu had been hiding far more than expected. No wonder Sasuke Uchiha could never beat him. In fact, not even a group of ninja clan heirs could hope to match Yagyu. Yagyu probably had the skills to graduate from the academy during his first year. After sharing their skills, the 3 of them came up with a simple plan. They agreed that if any new ideas came up, they could revise the plan the next morning. When they returned to the village center, Team 8 dispersed. Yagyu and Hinata walked together through the streets. For the first time since they were 3 years old, they were alone together. Yagyu, as a commoner without a surname, had never been allowed into the Hyuga clan's compound. Even Sakura didn't have that privilege. Only Ino could visit Hinata's home and invite her out to play. Whenever Hinata went out, she was always accompanied by a bodyguard or by Ino. Hinata, lost in thought, remembered a snowy night 9 years ago. She could almost see the past with her Byakugan. It was the same as that night when Yagyu had walked her home. 9 years had passed since then, and the boy she admired had become unmatched in his excellence. As she secretly stole glances at Yagyu's handsome profile and recalled their memories together, a smile crept onto her lips, her heart feeling as sweet as honey. At that moment, Yagyu suddenly turned to her, catching her gaze. Startled, Hinata quickly lowered her head and nervously twirled her fingers. Amused by her cuteness, Yagyu asked with a smile, "Hinata, do you want to come to my place and train together?" "Mem," Hinata mumbled in a barely audible voice, her head still lowered. Yagyu was used to her shyness by now. A timid girl like her agreeing to come to his house alone was already a brave decision. Yagyu had expected her to decline. Seeing that Hinata had agreed, Yagyu felt delighted. Being assigned to Team 8 was a pleasant surprise for him. He had been worried about how he could invite Hinata out without Ino's help. But now that they were teammates, Yagyu would have plenty of time to spend with her, growing closer while also aiming to unlock the Byakugan through his system. After arriving at his home, Yagyu created a shadow clone to prepare lunch while he and Hinata went to the training room for a taijutsu sparring match. Yagyu knew that only through training could Hinata become more comfortable being around him. After all, the moment she entered his house, she realized how bold her decision had been and had spent the entire time with her head down, her face flushed red. Yagyu planned to wait until Hinata became fully comfortable before suggesting they train outside in more intense, no-holds-barred sparring matches. Unless he experienced the same beginner's luck he had when the system first awakened, no-holds-barred matches were his best chance of unlocking valuable abilities like the Byakugan. As expected, even after repeatedly defeating Hinata in their taijutsu sparring match, Yagyu didn't see any glowing light, signaling a new ability drop. But Yagyu had already grown accustomed to this after the past year. Once his shadow clone finished cooking, Yagyu invited Hinata to stay for lunch. She accepted, as she had grown used to Yagyu cooking for them over the years. She, Ino, and Sakura had often stayed at his house for meals. Normally, she would have helped with the cooking by creating a shadow clone, but Hinata had been so flustered earlier that she hadn't thought to offer. Now, looking back, Hinata felt embarrassed. She had allowed Yagyu to cook while she ate without helping. Oblivious to her thoughts, Yagyu noticed that she was quieter than usual and didn't seem to be eating with her normal appetite. He thought she just wasn't used to being alone with him yet, and he chuckled softly to himself. After lunch, Hinata took the initiative to clear the table and wash the dishes. Seeing this, Yagyu didn't stop her. Once she finished the dishes, Hinata didn't leave right away. She began tidying up the house, as she and the others often did to show their appreciation to Yagyu. It had become a habit for them. Only after cleaning up did Hinata finally say goodbye and hurriedly leave. Aside from being focused during their sparring, Hinata had acted like a shy ostrich the whole time. Yagyu couldn't help but wish that the technology of the world had advanced enough for portable cameras. If it had, he would have captured all of Hinata's adorable expressions on camera. Chapter 22, Team 8 vs. Kurenai. The next morning, at 7 a.m., Yagyu had already finished his daily training and was taking a shower. Meanwhile, his shadow clone was preparing breakfast. When the clone brought the food out and dispersed into a puff of smoke, Yagyu emerged from the bathroom just in time. After finishing breakfast, Yagyu headed to his room to change clothes. He put on a white inner shirt, a black windbreaker, black ninja pants, and ninja shoes. After fastening his ninja tools pouch and headband, he went to the bathroom to put in his red-colored contact lenses. Dressed and ready, Yagyu left his house, heading toward the training grounds. It was only 7:25 a.m. When he arrived at the training ground, Yagyu was surprised to find that he was the last one to arrive. "Good morning, Hinata, Shino," Yagyu greeted them with a wave. "Good morning, Yagyu-kun," Hinata replied immediately, still using honorifics when addressing him. Shino Abirame, who stood with his hands in his pockets leaning against a wooden post, gave a slight nod. "Morning." Yagyu didn't mind Shino's reserved attitude. While others might think Shino was acting cool, Yagyu, as someone who had lived in another world, knew that Shino was simply not very talkative and had a more reserved personality. Deep down, Shino was eager for friendship and acknowledgement. By the time of the Boruto series, Shino had even let go of his old demeanor and became much more relaxed. With a shy Hinata and a reserved Shino, Yagyu wasn't sure what to talk about. If Shino weren't around, he might have teased Hinata a little. But with Shino's insect-based sensory abilities nearby, Yagyu thought better of it. Even if Hinata didn't faint from embarrassment, Shino would surely record the moment in his mental log of Yagyu's potential blackmail material. So, Yagyu simply leaned against a post, closed his eyes, and waited for Kurenai to arrive. Time passed slowly, and soon it was 8 a.m. Whoosh! Kurenai Yuhi appeared right on time, instantly arriving in front of Yagyu, Hinata, and Shino. If the three of them had wristwatches, they might have checked the time and wondered if Kurenai had been waiting nearby all along, since her timing was impeccable. "It looks like you're all ready, so let's get started." Seeing the three of them alert and prepared, Kurenai took out 3 bells from her ninja pouch and dangled them in front of Yagyu, Hinata, and Shino. She smiled and said, "Your task is simple, try to take these 3 bells from me." After speaking, Kurenai attached the bells to her waist and faced them. "Now, begin." Whoosh! As soon as Kurenai finished speaking, all 3 of them vanished in a blur. Kurenai stood in place, one hand resting on her hip. She didn't immediately rush to find Yagyu and the others, nor did she use any sensory jutsu to locate them. Instead, she stood there, waiting like a target to see what they would do. Unlike Kakashi, who had only 2 bells and imposed a time limit, Kurenai's test for Team 8 was the least difficult among all the Jonin instructors. Perhaps, this was just a show of her gentle nature. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Seeing that Kurenai hadn't moved and appeared to be inviting them to attack, someone in Team 8 quickly lost their patience. 3 kunai flew out from a dense tree, whistling through the air and aimed directly at Kurenai's head. The precision of the throws, even from such a distance, showed the impressive skill of the person behind them. Faced with the incoming kunai, Kurenai didn't dodge. Instead, the kunai sank into her head, thunk, and with a puff of smoke, she transformed into a log. When the smoke cleared, a piece of wood with the 3 kunai stuck in it lay on the ground, while Kurenai emerged from behind another wooden post. Substitution jutsu. It seemed Kurenai was telling them with her actions that she wasn't going all out but would be holding back to test them. Next, 3 black spheres flew out from another tree. The precision was again remarkable. The spheres landed in front, to the left, and to the right of Kurenai. Poof, 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 white smoke burst from the ground, shrouding Kurenai in a thick cloud. 8 trigrams palm, air palm, a young girl's voice called out. Hinata appeared in a blur, striking her palm toward the smoke. A twisted gust of air shot from her hand, flying straight into the cloud. The smoke dissipated as the wind blew it away, revealing Kurenai's figure. However, Kurenai's body appeared distorted, like a mirage, gradually fading until she disappeared completely. Suddenly, a shadowy figure emerged behind Hinata. Since she hadn't activated her Byakugan, it seemed Hinata hadn't noticed the figure. Just as the shadowy figure was about to attack, Hinata's body exploded into a puff of white smoke, poof, vanishing from sight. Seeing this, Kurenai stepped out from behind another wooden post, a surprised look on her face. A shadow clone jutsu. Just like how Sasuke Uchiha had surprised Kakashi by using the fireball jutsu, Hinata's use of the shadow clone jutsu at her age shocked Kurenai. This meant that Hinata's chakra reserves far exceeded the norm for someone her age. But Kurenai's surprises weren't over yet. Water release, great waterfall jutsu. A voice called out from behind, and a massive torrent of water, towering at least 5 or 6 meters high, came crashing toward Kurenai. Turning her head to glance at the approaching wave, Kurenai's eyes widened in shock before she quickly used the body flicker technique to evade it. Boom. The massive wave crashed onto the ground with a deafening roar. As the water began to recede, 2 figures raced across the surface, charging toward Kurenai. The 2 identical figures were both Yagyu. Watching them approach, Kurenai's eyes were still filled with shock. Creating such a huge volume of water in a dry environment, such chakra reserves, can he really be a genin? But with Yagyu and his clone closing in, Kurenai didn't have time to ponder Yagyu's secrets any longer. Instinctively, she pulled out a kunai from her pouch, preparing to test Yagyu's close combat skills. However, what happened next made her eyes widen even further in disbelief. Water release, great waterfall jutsu. One of the Yagyus leaped backward, forming hand signs in midair, and unleashed another torrent of water from his mouth. The massive wave wasn't aimed at Kurenai but at the other Yagyu ahead. The Yagyu in front raised his right hand, palm facing upward, as if he intended to catch the oncoming wave. Chapter 23, Spiral Water Tornado, Yagyu's True Strength. Spiral Water Tornado. As the massive wave came crashing down, threatening to drench Yagyu completely, something unexpected happened. Just as the water was about to engulf him, it began to converge toward his raised hand, as though magnetically drawn. A terrifying rotational force appeared from nowhere, causing the water to swirl rapidly. In mere moments, the water transformed into a gigantic water tornado. Once the water tornado was fully formed, Yagyu flung it toward Kurenai. Despite its fluid nature, the water tornado resembled a giant spinning top, carving a deep trench into the ground as it moved. The intense suction force ripped the surrounding grass from the ground and caused Kurenai's body to lean slightly forward. Watching the incoming water tornado, Kurenai, who specialized in genjutsu, found herself with no way to counter it. She had no choice but to use the body flicker technique to evade, just as she had done earlier. The massive water tornado barreled into the forest, uprooting trees and leaving the ground in chaos. Both Hinata and Shino, who had been hiding in the trees, were left astounded by the sheer power of the technique. Having never encountered a tailed beast before, neither of them had ever seen a jutsu of such destructive force. What made it even more frightening was the fact that this formidable jutsu was a jutsu without hand signs. Kurenai, watching Yagyu dispel his shadow clone and appear to be panting heavily, couldn't help but be amazed. At that moment, she saw a familiar figure in Yagyu, a figure reminiscent of Kakashi Hatake. At the age of 12, Kakashi had developed the A-rank lightning-style jutsu, Chidori. Now, Yagyu had developed a water-style technique that didn't require hand seals. Kurenai was certain she had never seen or even heard of such a water jutsu before. Just yesterday, she had specifically gathered information on her 3 students. She knew about Yagyu's background and history, and this jutsu couldn't have come from his parents. It was even more unlikely that someone else had taught him. If anyone in the village knew such a jutsu, they would be famous by now. There was only one explanation: Yagyu had created it himself. Is this the world of geniuses? Kurenai mused to herself. Fortunately for her, Yagyu lacked battle experience. Had he managed to hit her with that attack, she would have been severely injured. Even a glancing blow could have left her in a very embarrassing state. But the fact that such a genius was her student filled Kurenai with joy. She looked at Yagyu with admiration, as though he were a precious treasure. At the same time, Kurenai wasn't slow to act. She began forming hand seals, channeling her powerful in-release chakra into Yagyu's mind. Suddenly, Yagyu's body stiffened, as though bound by invisible ropes, standing rigid in place. From Yagyu's perspective, he indeed felt as if he had been tied up. A large tree had appeared behind him out of nowhere, and vines, like tendrils, wrapped tightly around him, binding him to the tree. This was none other than Kurenai's signature technique, demonic illusion, tree binding death. However, despite being bound, Yagyu smiled confidently. "Sensei, you've already lost." Kurenai, who had just subdued Yagyu with her genjutsu and was about to move on to test the others, paused in surprise. She quickly glanced down at her waist, as if realizing something. The 3 bells hanging from her waist were gone. Kurenai's expression shifted. She mentally replayed the previous moments and quickly deduced when the bells had disappeared. Letting out a wry smile, she dispelled Yagyu's genjutsu and said, "No wonder you charged at me so openly. This was your strategy all along." "That's right," Yagyu said, smiling confidently as Hinata and Shino emerged from the forest. "The water-style jutsu I used is one I developed myself, but I didn't think it would be enough to defeat you, sensei. My role was to distract you, drawing all your attention, while Shino went for the bells." As soon as Yagyu finished speaking, Shino took out the 3 bells and tossed 2 of them to Yagyu and Hinata. Shino had used his insects to steal the bells. With Kurenai's focus entirely on Yagyu, and without using her sensory jutsu, she hadn't noticed the insects creeping up to her. Clap, clap, clap. Kurenai applauded, offering praise without hesitation. "A brilliant strategy. I admit defeat." Whoosh. Just as Kurenai spoke, a blue light flickered from her body. A moment later, a blue beam shot out from her, hovering above the ground and forming a floating blue orb. Seeing this, Yagyu froze briefly before a smile spread across his face. A drop. The game system had triggered an item drop. As long as there was a victory, there was always a chance to trigger this effect. Kurenai's verbal surrender had triggered a blue orb. "Looks like I got lucky this time," Yagyu thought. A few seconds later, the blue orb floated toward Yagyu and merged into his body. He didn't immediately open his inventory to check the contents, though. Instead, he deactivated his Sharingan and blinked a few times to make sure his contact lenses were still in place. Yes, Yagyu had already awakened his Sharingan. Half a year ago, during an intense training session, Yagyu had entered a state of deep concentration. When he finally snapped out of it, he realized that his vision had changed dramatically. His dynamic vision had become so sharp that he could even track the flutter of a fly's wings in slow motion. At that moment, Yagyu knew that his Sharingan had awakened. And not just any Sharingan, his eyes had manifested the Two-Tomo Sharingan upon awakening. Whether it was due to his immense mental energy or the influence of Ashura's chakra, Yagyu wasn't sure. During the past year, Yagyu had also been secretly training a specific jutsu, the Raise-Non. The spiral water tornado he had used earlier was a combination of the Raise-Non and the Great Waterfall Jutsu. As one of Naruto's signature moves, the Raise-Non was the only A-rank jutsu in the original series where both the principles and training methods were fully explained. When Yagyu first arrived in this world, he had quickly written down the training steps for the Raise-Non, knowing it would likely be the most powerful jutsu he could learn in this lifetime. As for advanced forms of the Raise-Non, like the Rasen Shuriken or other variations, Yagyu hadn't held out much hope. But after his game system awakened and he acquired Ashura's chakra from Naruto, Yagyu became even more determined to master the Raise-Non. Like the multi-shadow clone jutsu, the Raise-Non was incredibly well suited for those with the Sage of Six Paths body. What was a powerful jutsu to others became something Yagyu could use freely, even creating multiple shadow clones to use it simultaneously. This combination technique was an overwhelming force against any opponent of the same level. Once Yagyu had fused Ashura's chakra, he immediately began secretly training in the Raise-Non. Unfortunately, Yagyu's natural talent was quite average, and he got stuck at the first stage of training. It wasn't until he unlocked something from Sakura that his talent seemed to skyrocket. That item was chakra control. Chapter 24, A Mentor and Illusion Expert. Although Sakura's chakra control was categorized as blue tier and couldn't compare to the battle-ready Kekkei, in Yagyu's eyes, her chakra control was absolutely on par with the red tier bloodline limits. This talent transformed Yagyu's natural abilities from ordinary to genius level. By the time Yagyu was in his 3rd year, he had already mastered all the jutsu left behind by his parents. By 6th grade, he had successfully learned the Raise-Non he had been secretly practicing, along with its combination technique, the Spiral Water Tornado, which combined with Water Style, Great Waterfall Jutsu. Despite not having graduated yet, Yagyu had mastered multiple jutsu, including 2 or more of B and A rank techniques. All of this was thanks to his refined chakra control and the Shadow Clone Jutsu. With the right talent and the ability to grind, Yagyu would have learned even more if only he had more scrolls available. Otherwise, he would have mastered far more jutsu by now. As Yagyu was testing his contact lenses to see if they had shifted, Kurenai Yuhi smiled again and said, "I'm very satisfied with your performance. Since it's still early, let's do a mission together, and then I'll treat you all to barbecue." With that, Kurenai shifted from being their elder to acting like a big sister, placing her arm around Hinata's shoulder, walking alongside Yagyu and the others. As they walked, Kurenai couldn't help but ask curiously, "Yagyu, how did you come up with that hand-seal-less water style technique?" "It was just a spark of inspiration," Yagyu replied. "From my father's ninja diary, I learned that ninja could gather chakra at their feet to walk on walls, so I tried it and realized I could control chakra flow perfectly. That's probably why none of the scrolls my parents left behind posed any difficulty for me. When I went to school, I saw a picture of a tornado in one of the textbooks. Seeing the rotation of the wind sparked a bold idea: could I gather chakra in my hand, make it rotate, and combine wind or water to create a tornado or a water vortex? After some attempts, I found that gathering chakra wasn't difficult, but combining the spinning chakra with water took countless tries. It wasn't until a few months ago that I finally succeeded." Is this the genius's spark of inspiration? After hearing Yagyu's explanation, both Kurenai and Shino, and even Hinata, who admired Yagyu deeply, were left speechless. The principle Yagyu explained sounded simple, and their minds were already telling them, "I get it, I've learned it." But their hands betrayed them, screaming, "No, you haven't." Being able to develop such a hand-seal-less jutsu on his own was something only a talent like Yagyu could achieve. However, after hearing how Yagyu gathered chakra, Kurenai suddenly had a flash of inspiration. She remembered a nearly legendary hand-seal-less jutsu and couldn't help but ask, "Yagyu, have you heard of the Raise-Non?" Yagyu's mind lit up, and inwardly, he smiled, "She's taken the bait. I've found my backer." Feigning confusion, Yagyu looked at Kurenai. "Raise-Non. The Raise-Non is an A-rank jutsu developed by the 4th Hokage, and it's also hand-seal-less," Kurenai explained while recalling its appearance. "It's a technique where chakra is gathered into a ball in the palm and rotates at high speed. It's similar to the way you rotate chakra in your hand." "A chakra ball?" Yagyu pretended to be deep in thought. Then he raised his hand, and a blue chakra vortex began to form in his palm. The chakra vortex grew larger but didn't coalesce into a ball. Instead, it transformed into a miniature blue tornado. A moment later, the blue tornado compressed into a ball, spinning rapidly for a few seconds before bursting, creating a gust of wind that fluttered their clothes. Despite the failure, Yagyu's face lit up with excitement. "Sensei, it seems this method might work." "Don't try it recklessly, be careful," Kurenai said, patting Yagyu on the shoulder and reassuring him, "I know the 4th Hokage's disciple, I'll ask them about the details of the Raise-Non for you." "There's no need, Sensei," Yagyu said confidently. "Now that I know it's a rotating chakra ball, I'm sure I'll master it." At that moment, Yagyu seemed to radiate confidence. Shino and Hinata once again felt the vast gap between themselves and Yagyu. Even Kurenai was taken aback by Yagyu's presence. She had to admit that this 12-year-old boy, who was almost as tall as her, had an impressive aura. No wonder Kakashi was so popular in school when he was younger. Such a powerful presence is irresistible to girls. Rather than discouraging Yagyu's confidence, Kurenai smiled and advised, "Just be careful during your training, and use shadow clones to assist you." "I understand, sensei," Yagyu replied obediently, nodding. His respectful and eager-to-learn attitude made Kurenai like him even more. Right now, Yagyu was Kurenai's most treasured student. She believed that, in the future, he would be her proudest student as well. On their way to the Hokage's office, Yagyu discreetly summoned the virtual panel that only he could see. He checked the blue orb he had received from Kurenai. A moment later, the information about the blue orb appeared. Illusion Expert, Blue. Seeing the words, Yagyu's eyes lit up. With Sakura as an example, Yagyu didn't need to guess, this illusion expert was another innate ability. If he could obtain something like chakra control as a talent, then getting a genjutsu talent wasn't too surprising. Although Kurenai wasn't as famous as elite jonin like Kakashi, Asuma, or Guy, she was still an outstanding jonin compared to others. In Konoha, she was renowned as a genjutsu expert. In the original series, her poor performance was because her opponents were overpowered. Itachi Uchiha was a genjutsu master second only to Shisui, and Yakumo Kurama was a chosen prodigy from the Kurama clan, essentially the Aizen of the Naruto world. Facing such opponents, it was perfectly normal for Kurenai, who specialized in genjutsu, to be defeated swiftly. However, as a regular ninja without a Kekkei Genkai, Kurenai had reached the pinnacle of what she could achieve. Illusion Expert perfectly encapsulated her natural talent in genjutsu. By merging this orb, Yagyu knew he would become a genjutsu prodigy, even without the Sharingan. Without hesitation, Yagyu fused the orb. As the light merged with his body, Yagyu didn't notice any immediate changes, just as he hadn't when he fused with the Sharingan. The real difference would become apparent once he began studying genjutsu. Chapter 25, 3 Tomo Sharingan, The Legend of the Eyes. Time passed quickly, like a swing gently moving forward from late March to early June. Over the past 2 months, the new generation of genin, the 60th class, had been completing various D-rank missions. These D-rank missions mostly involved helping villagers with trivial tasks, such as babysitting, assisting with farm work, clearing debris from ditches, and so on. The rewards for these missions were minimal, and a large portion of the earnings was divided among the village, their jonin mentor, and their teammates. For those lacking patience, these tasks could become incredibly frustrating, especially for Team 7, who had just graduated and were dreaming of missions involving the protection of high-profile figures or fierce battles against strong enemies. On the other hand, Team 8 approached these missions dutifully. Yagyu and his team understood that these D-rank missions not only tested their patience but also helped build teamwork. Therefore, neither Yagyu nor Hinata used shadow clones to complete these tasks, they carried them out personally. Unlike the more laid-back Kakashi, Kurenai Yui, in her first role as a jonin mentor, was extremely attentive to her students. After each mission, she would teach Yagyu and the others techniques that were typically learned by genin, such as tree climbing and water walking, skills Yagyu and Hinata had already mastered. She also conducted chakra nature tests for the team and even brought out genjutsu scrolls to see if anyone possessed nature chakra. After all these tests, Kurenai became even more attached to Yagyu as a student. She had the feeling that Yagyu was a perfect student, sent by fate, to inherit the teachings of the Yui family. Shino and Hinata lacked the aptitude to learn genjutsu, as they didn't possess nature chakra. For a mentor who specialized in genjutsu, like Kurenai, there wasn't much left for her to teach them beyond basic ninja skills. When it came to their clan-specific techniques, Kurenai had no authority to make suggestions. Yagyu, on the other hand, learned the genjutsu from Kurenai's scrolls in just one day. This meant that not only did he possess nature chakra, but he also had an exceptional talent for genjutsu. As a result, Kurenai devoted herself to nurturing Yagyu's abilities, often giving him personal lessons in front of Shino and Hinata. Over these 2 months, Yagyu's skills had grown immensely. His understanding of genjutsu had progressed from novice to surpassing his peers. Even if he relied solely on genjutsu, Yagyu was confident that he could defeat any of the 12 Konoha rookies. This was largely due to the fact that his Sharingan had finally evolved into a 3-Tomo Sharingan. All of this was thanks to his illusion expert talent. Genjutsu is a in-natured technique, while the Sharingan, a in-nature Kekkeigenkai, is also referred to as the illusion eye. However, before the evolution to 3-tomo, the Sharingan primarily functioned as an eye for perception and copying. The 3-tomo Sharingan was what made the Uchiha clan renowned throughout the ninja world, making them nearly unbeatable in one-on-one combat. The legendary Mangekyo Sharingan was an even more powerful version of this eye. Every Uchiha who mastered the 3-tomo Sharingan to its full potential became an elite jonin, genjutsu specialist, and a nightmare for those reliant on genjutsu. This bloodline was so overpowered that a single glance could cast genjutsu without any need for hand seals. If the opponent was a genjutsu user, unless their in-nature chakra was stronger than that of the Uchiha, the Sharingan naturally reflected the genjutsu back at them. In the original series, Kurenai herself had experienced this firsthand when her genjutsu was reflected by Itachi Uchiha. This is why, when fighting against someone from the Uchiha clan, a ninja without sufficient countermeasures was essentially fighting with one eye closed. In a real-life battle, getting hit by a finishing move meant actual death. Yagyu's mastery of in-nature chakra, further honed through his genjutsu training, naturally led his Sharingan to evolve into its 3-tomo form. With this evolution into the illusion eye, Yagyu's genjutsu skills soared to unprecedented levels, as though his abilities were enhanced by a cheat code. The genjutsu techniques that Kurenai taught him were not only quickly mastered, but Yagyu also found that he could cast them without needing to form hand seals. By the time he fully controlled his 3-tomo Sharingan, his proficiency in genjutsu had surpassed even Kurenai's. This was the difference between a normal person and someone with a cheat-level ability. This was the Legend of the Eyes. No one understood this feeling better than Rock Lee from the original series. In addition to his growth in strength, Yagyu's relationship with Hinata had also made incredible progress during these 2 months. After each mission, Yagyu would invite Hinata to his home for training. Despite her shyness, Hinata never refused his invitations. At first, Yagyu was very gentlemanly and reserved, only acting as Hinata's sparring partner. But as Hinata gradually grew accustomed to being alone with Yagyu, the so-called Master of Nurturing began his next steps. During their taijutsu sparring, Yagyu no longer stopped at simply blocking or parrying. The training became more chaotic, and Yagyu would secretly activate his Sharingan to spot Hinata's weak points, using gentle force to create mistakes that led to moments of close physical contact. Yagyu's training methods were highly effective. At first, Hinata would turn beet red and even faint at the slightest touch. But since Yagyu never crossed any lines, she slowly adapted, eventually becoming immune to these moments of physical closeness. After each training session, Hinata would stay to eat at Yagyu's house. She felt more comfortable there since she was still too reserved to fully relax at home, especially since her father and sister were unaware of her big appetite. Only Yagyu would prepare large amounts of food for her, allowing her to eat freely. Learning from her earlier embarrassment, Hinata began creating shadow clones to help Yagyu shadow clone with the cooking and house chores. Since Yagyu provided all the food, and she was the one who ate the most, Hinata also started giving Yagyu her share of the mission rewards. Yagyu didn't refuse. After all, ever since graduating from the academy, the village had stopped providing him with allowances. And without any high-level missions under his belt yet, Yagyu barely earned enough to cover Hinata's meals. Thus, Yagyu and Hinata had essentially begun living a married life in advance. While helping Yagyu clean his home, Hinata even started washing his clothes. Every time, Yagyu would praise Hinata for her diligence, telling her she would make a great wife, leaving the girl blushing and more determined than ever to please him. Thankfully, after graduation, Hayashi Hyuga had shifted his focus to Hinata's younger sister, who showed more promise. He had no idea that his eldest daughter was spending so much time at a boy's house, helping with cleaning, laundry, and meals. Otherwise, Yagyu might have found himself under the scrutiny of a jonin-level protective father. Life was peaceful and pleasant. One day, at 9 a.m., Team 8 gathered at their usual spot, waiting for Kurenai. Kurenai arrived right on time, appearing with a body flicker technique. Her next words, however, excited Yagyu and his teammates. "Your performance over the past few months has been excellent. You've received high praise from every client. That's why I've decided to take you all to receive a higher-ranked mission today."